I don't know. We'll have to think about that. You saw the new hat. The hottest hat is it says Trump 2028. We're driving the left crazy. When you see that.
It's not clear what talks, if any, will take place today in Istanbul, Turkey, between Ukraine and Russia. Russia says Vladimir Putin is not due to be in Turkey today to attend the peace talks. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte in Turkey for a ministers meeting says Moscow needs to explain why Putin is not planning to take part in the talks he called for.
Ukraine is ready to commit to a ceasefire and immediate negotiations. That's absolutely clear. The ball is now clearly in Russia's court.
Ukrainian President Zelensky, who had previously said that he would be in Istanbul to meet with Putin, is now instead in Ankara for talks with Turkey's President Erdogan. The south-central part of the U.S. is under a heat wave. Bloomberg meteorologist Craig Allen has the latest.
Temperatures in Texas, Oklahoma, on up into Kansas, they will be climbing to 20 to 30 degrees above the seasonal average so early in the season. And that means they're going to be reaching 95 to 105 degrees along with humidity that will make it feel like it's over 110. And this kind of blistering heat will cover over 12 million people with heat alerts, and it's going to continue into the weekend.
Bloomberg's Craig Allen. It's day one of the PGA Championship. After 6 rounds, Ryan Fox leads with 3 under. For our listeners in New York, Boston, and D.C., Bloomberg will bring you live play-by-play coverage starting after the closing bell and all weekend long on Bloomberg Radio. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Ball.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. I'm going to show the footage right now because the president's just stuck outside cameras. But in Abu Dhabi, the president is being greeted by Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, the Nahyan family. Nahyan is the ancient tribe of Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. To make this simple for those not keeping score at home, Abu Dhabi has oil, Dubai does not.
Does not.
That's sort of the math.
Okay, all right.
And it's been a really interesting coexistence. I've made the drive, I think, twice. I'm going to say it's 60 miles. I can't, off the top of my head, I can't recall. But in Abu Dhabi, here with Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan this morning, we'll have much more on it. It seems like every place, I'm looking at the wonderful schedule. Honey, thank you so much for this schedule. I think everywhere he's going, I think this trip is brought to you by the Ritz-Carlton.
Exactly.
I'm kidding, folks.
You certainly brought the Middle East right onto the front pages, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the trip continues. Futures at -20 on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts. This is Bloomberg's Surveillance.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can watch either version, the large screen or the screen that has the telemetry of the market on my website. Now, I also have X Spaces open, so if you have a question, if you want to comment about the news, please ask for the mic, and you'll be live on the show. This is an interactive show. Thank you for typing in any comments in the chat. So please help support my work by making sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Please subscribe to all those channels. The links are in the description of this video. All these videos that I do are for free, and I give you unique perspectives, such as the temple that I was telling you about, but also about what's going on in finance and intelligence about how to benefit from the market moves. I tell you exactly what to do, all right? if you've been following me, you would have gained about 10 to 18% return since this market sell-off with new deployed money. So if you pay attention to me, you'll make money. Not only that, if you pay attention to me, you'll slow down the aging process and improve your health. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it, but please help support my work. Share the links. Make sure you subscribe to all the channels. Ask your social media to follow me. And get the great products that I have on my store. You can also donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on my website. Or you can subscribe and be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, but it's through the donations and the people that purchase the products that help me produce these videos for free so people can learn on how to improve their health and how to navigate through tumultuous times in the financial markets. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. I have it in lavender. I have it also in peppermint and in lemongrass and charcoal tea tree. Get a few bars for your household. They're very high quality soaps, way better than stuff that Procter & Gamble sells at the grocery store or at the drugstore. And it helps support your health and helps support the work that I do. So get a few bars for your household. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's all caps, discount 5, and that'll apply to any order that you make. So let's go back to Bloomberg.
About 0.3%. The 2-year yield 3.98%. That's down 7 basis points. The yield on the 10-year 4.48%, and that's down 5 basis points. Here, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index off about 0.3%. Walmart posted strong sales, but said price increases could be coming because of tariffs. Its shares now down 1%. Then you have global trade uncertainty, pushing Deere to cut the low end of its annual profit outlook range. Its shares are up more than 3%. And finally, Foot Locker shares soaring, 83%. Signed a deal to be purchased by Dick's Sporting Goods. Dick's shares are off about 11%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now. Wherever you get your podcasts, I'm Liz Mateo. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Greatly appreciated. He's in the Carolinas with First Citizens Bank. He thinks he's here to talk economics. But Paul, did you explain to Phil Nord that really what we're doing is trying to get tickets to the PGA?
Yeah.
eBay. I think they got a tent there.
I can call somebody.
You're going to be there this weekend?
Yeah, I won't be. It's only a couple hours from Raleigh, so
Yeah,
just down the road.
it's
Maybe I get a last second invite.
Get a birch bag.
Get a birch bag. Phil Newhart joins us. He's the Director of Market and Economic Research at First Citizens Bank and Trust Company. Of course, the highlight of his career is he worked with our very own Gina Martin Adams when they were Wachovia and Wells and all that kind of stuff. Which, by the way, you got your broker-dealer license from my firm, Wheat First Securities. Phil, thanks so much for joining us here. I mean, I'm looking at the S&P 500. I don't know how to look at it. We're 4% off the recent high.
Mm-hmm.
We're 18% off that low just a couple of weeks ago. What are you telling your clients about this market here? Are we constructive or are we still concerned?
We're still meeting.
Buy into the market. Do not be fearful. Take this opportunity to continue to buy shares. By the end of the year, we're going to be at an all-time high for the S&P 500, and most likely we're going to see very close, if not at an all-time high, in July. All right? So take this as an opportunity to continue to buy shares. All right? Don't be fearful, but do it in a broad index. I don't think it's advisable to purchase individual stocks because of the idiosyncratic risk. The reason why I say this is VIX is starting to go down. The yen is starting to weaken. Those are two really important risk indicators. All right. So risk is starting to come out of the system. We're going to find that tariffs didn't do too much damage to the economy. And not only that, CNN created a video. They did a show, right, yesterday, and they were interviewing the longshoremen and goods and services that are coming from China. And here's what has happened. A few days ago, they were worried about shelves being empty, okay? Because ships were shipments were being canceled because they didn't want the tariff. Well, once Trump brought down the tariffs with China, additional orders were made. And so there is a group of goods that are floating over the sea right now to the United States, to California. All right. They have stated that there's going to be an overflow of goods now on the shore, and that it's going to take weeks to be able to process them. So what that means is that you're going to actually, the market's open now, but what that basically means is that these retailers that were front loading their orders now are going to have too much stuff. There's a very good probability that many of the goods that you thought were going to elevate in price, there was going to be some sort of inflation, may actually be deflating because they have too much inventory. This is what I mean. Never bet against the United States, because she will always surprise you in the positive. And it's not good to bet against Trump, because that boy has a blessing from God. All right. So if you want to demonize him, if you want to go against him, you want to bet against America, that's like betting against God. All right. Because there's a blessing that's taking place. And Trump gave you a gift in the market. You listen to all these other stupid podcasters that said to stay away from the market, to sell, and that there was this huge dislocation and the market's going to crash and blah, 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 and the dollar's going to weaken. The dollar's strengthening. The treasury market is in negative correlation again with equities. Equities are going up. We're going to see an all-time high, most likely in July. And the goods that are being shipped right now, the shore can't even process them enough because of all the front loading. You're going to have too many goods in the United States. The prices are going to go down. While all of the stupid economists out there said the prices were going to go up. Now, the inflation data that came in, the expectation was that it was going, that prices month over month were going to be at zero. Well, actually, it went up by 0.1, which is statistically almost nothing. So don't bet against America. And this is exactly what I said 4 weeks ago. But you had all these famous podcasters that think they know how the world works, and all these damn economists that think they know how the world works, and they were all fucking wrong.
From New York. Define the day-to-day grind you have and the enjoyment of being distant from Manhattan. It really is a tangible difference.
It's tangible. I was here for a decade doing equity strategy for Morgan Stanley, before that Wachovia Wells, Regina, and there is something to be said to being on the ground. I mean, I always found it entertaining that auto analysts are based in New York City. How do you have a view of what's going on with autos in the country?
And the whole interstate beltway down to Detroit, down to the south.
Exactly. So, no, the perspective is very different. Our clients, we have big clients, we have small clients. I really do feel more like I have my pulse on the real economy than I did during my time.
So what's your tariff analysis? We said Elizabeth Economy on from Stanford was world class. What we care about is Phil Newark.
Right. So, look, clients who are related to goods in any way, they're taking a wait-and-see approach. We're seeing a pause. Our rail division described it as a push away from the desk, right? So CapEx, M&A, et cetera, we are seeing a pause there. For those who are related to services, it's not affecting them yet. It will, but it's not yet, and then they're moving forward. So we are seeing hesitancy, we're seeing uncertainty.
So for the ones that were listening to me yesterday, I said I was putting a hedge strategy in, all right, for oil. I just closed out that position and made money. But the thing is that just listen to me. You'll do okay. But better yet, what's more important is if you listen to me and improve your health. Because you'll have more years, you'll have more vitality, And oh, by the way, if everyone did this in the United States, our healthcare costs would radically go down by tens of billions of dollars.
Green well for you guys at this point?
You know, the truth. So our internal strategies, we take a factor-based approach. We are not. I sound like Gina. I know.
Yeah.
We are not making major sector bets, but we are up in quality right now and profitability. We're focused on ROE, ROA, profit margins.
So I mean, does that just mean technology,
So
financials?
yeah, technology screens well, but there's others. I mean, we screen within sectors, right? So there's places in energy that look really attractive. Communication services. It's not just a tech story. Obviously, if you look at the market as a whole, it's all tech.
All right, so with the market opening, we are at the S&P 500 is at 5,878. VIX is at 1870. Euro USD is at 1.12. The oil is trading at 61.58. BITO is trading at 21.64, which is important because it's above the support level of 21.48. And the USD Japanese yen is trading at 145.8. I'd like to see it a little bit above 145, you know, like the 146, 147 range. And Gush is trading at 22.32. DRIP is trading at 10.26. Natural gas is trading at 3.47. Natural gas is a little bit lower right now. Inventories on oil yesterday seemed a little higher. And UCO is trading at 21.12.
And that's what we're hearing from a lot of these different analysts. They're looking at free cash flow, the nature of it, the makeup of it as well. The Dow negative 175, futures down 14. The market opened down 14. It was down more so earlier. On YouTube, subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts, Bloomberg Surveillance.
Okay, we're still waiting for Trump to speak at Abu Dhabi. So while we're waiting for that, let me do a market plug. So I have this protocol that I follow, all right? And that is a holistic approach, but it's also a certain stacking that I do with supplements. It's very extensive. Most people can't afford what I do, all right? They can't afford everything that I do. But if you listen to me, I'll give you the key components to it so you can build your own protocol that you can afford. And you will benefit from it, all right? And slow down the aging process and get healthy. So this core protocol that you should be following is taking max 35 or max 14 or cleanse to boost up your immune system. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is to bring down inflammation, and you do that with the turmerics, the ashwagandhas, and the lignans. That will improve your immune system, help with your cardiovascular, and bring down overall inflammation. So if you have arthritis, it'll help. If you work out, you'll recover quicker because it's reducing that inflammation after that workout. And that fourth pillar is Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost is going to increase your energy levels and rev up your metabolism. That means you're going to lose weight healthy. It's going to target your cardiovascular system. It's going to help with your brain health. It's going to help with the musculature, so your strength will increase. So there's lots of benefits in taking Boomer Boost. You stack that together, that's a very powerful stack. But there are other stacks that you can do that to add on to that, or you have a smaller stack for your health. And we'll go over that throughout this transmission. So let's just talk about that first pillar. That first pillar is to boost up that immune system. Take max 35, which is 35 parts per million. Max 14, which is 14 parts per million, or take cleanse, which is 30 parts per million. You take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, then swallow. What that's going to do is going to improve your epithelial lining in your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. It's going to help with the mucosal barrier, and it's going to boost up your immune system. Really important to do every day. I've been doing this for 5 years, every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Do the same thing, swish it in your mouth, gargle, and then swallow. Do that And then once you start feeling better, then go back to your maintenance. But do that every day, very important. So, and that what that will do is it's going to improve your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the cleanse, get the max 35, and get the max 14, boost up that immune system. All right. They don't really have any good audio from Live Now with Trump. So let's take a look at some of the news that's popping up here. So let's listen to Fox News about this nuclear deal with Iran.
The dealership always is.
Straight to a Fox News alert. Any minute now, President Trump will speak to U.S. troops at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar before heading to Abu Dhabi for the third leg of his historic Middle East trip.
So the president already striking a massive Boeing deal with Qatar, while Iran says they're ready to sign a nuclear deal.
All right, Lucas Tomlinson, just mentioned by Kevin Cork moments ago, is live at the airbase with the latest. Hey, Lucas.
Well, good afternoon, guys, from Al Udeid Air Base, the largest in the Middle East, a much quieter base with no wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and ISIS defeated. And President Trump would like to keep it that way. We heard from his remarks earlier, he wants this to be a trip about commerce, not conflict, and we've seen the commerce. The Saudis first pledging over $600 billion now right here in Qatar. The Emir saying he's going to up that to $1.2 trillion. So President Trump is due here to address the troops here, soldiers and airmen, Al Udeid Air Base. But before coming here, President Trump spoke with business leaders in Qatar, where he says he's close to a nuclear deal with Iran. Of course, Iran not far away, and Qatar and Iran share the largest gas field in the Persian Gulf. That's why these countries want to see a deal happen. Here's President Trump earlier.
I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's two steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second step. We're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace.
And keep in mind, guys, for context, it was just a few weeks ago when President Trump was posting on Truth Social about bombing Iran. Now you don't hear that word here in the region. In addition to the business deals, diplomacy on the agenda, President Trump meeting the new president of Syria in Riyadh, who 6 months ago had a $10 million bounty on his head, running an al-Qaeda affiliate in Syria. Now he says he wants the U.S. to invest in this country, keep Iran out now that the Assad regime is gone. Trump said he will remove sanctions on Syria. Here's the president earlier here in GETTR.
Syria, we took out the sanctions, and that's been, I didn't even realize it's been many, many years that they've had sanctions. And as you know, there was a very big change at the top. And I thought that we have to give them a chance. They really have no chance with the sanctions.
Of course, those sanctions went back 4 decades, not just to Assad, the whole Assad family. Now, here's the headline from NBC. Top Iranian official says Tehran would forego highly enriched uranium and nuclear deal with Trump. So that's big news because, of course, President Trump, we heard from Senator Khan, we've heard from the Trump administration, they do not want to see Iran enriching uranium. Perhaps this leaves the possibility of some kind of enrichment outside the country and freeing up Iran potentially to be able to build nuclear reactors. But we're just moments away from President Trump coming here to LUD. We've had a few warm-up backs. We had Lee Greenwood. I don't know why we didn't see him on the stage in Riyadh, but he's here in LUD. Firing up the troops scene. We also had Theo Vaughn, fresh off his big lunch in Miami with Ivanka and Jared, guys.
Wow, I did not know that. The podcast with Theo Vaughn. And Lucas, let me ask you something. In terms of troops, I know when we're at war, there's like 10,000, there's a capability of 10, 20,000 troops. What do you think the capacity is now? What is the American presence like there?
Well, there's certainly not that many. You don't see the bombers on the ramp like you did in the fall, Ryan, when Iran, of course, launched the largest ballistic missile attack in world history against Israel. In the fall, some B-52 bombers were here. Now it's really just refueling planes, KC-135s, some reconnaissance aircraft. I don't know if you can see behind me, there's a Reaper drone. Of course, we've lost a few of those the past few months in bombardment against the Houthis, but it's certainly a much more peaceful scene here. Far different cry from decades ago in the height of the Iraq and Afghan wars. And then don't forget about ISIS. Don't forget about President Trump dropping the mother of all bombs on ISIS in eastern Afghanistan. But I digress, Brian.
Lucas, I like the way you set it up. You said the president is giving them the option of commerce over conflict. But he also, and I love the sign behind it because it's something that the president says often, peace through strength. He's not funding the military. He's making them strong, but he wants to give these countries a way out, a relationship with money.
There's no question, and let's not forget credit to the men and women of the U.S. military. One of the reasons it has been peaceful recently is because of the U.S. military. You've got 2 aircraft carrier strike groups. Let's not forget about the Navy guys. We got the Harry S. Truman off the coast of Saudi Arabia in the Red Sea, Carl Vinson off the coast of Oman. Of course, you got destroyer, cruiser escorts, some submarines in there as well. So there's a lot of firepower assembled in this area. President Trump had the ceasefire with the Houthis. Back to your point, though, Lawrence. Business deals are on the agenda here. $600 billion pledged from the Saudis. Saudi Crown Prince spent the entire day with President Trump. That doesn't just happen. Met him on the ramp when he stepped off Air Force One. We saw the escort with the Saudi F-15s.
This is Pod 5, the first fully immersive sleep system. Intelligent, adaptive, effortless. It doesn't replace your bed, it transforms it. Pod 5 listens and responds to your needs in real time, adjusting temperature.
Escort with the Saudi F-15s. We actually have a Qatari F-15 over there. Not sure that was the one that took part, was one of the playmates with Air Force One on the approach here to Qatar. But it's been full diplomatic, military recognition, all the pomp and circumstance that the Qataris can muster. We saw the same in Saudis. Let's not forget that camel contingent, guys, here in Qatar. It's pretty impressive formation, and there's Theo Vaughn right there. And also the stallions. You have the Arabian signs in Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure those were stallions or geldings, though, Ainsley.
What I love about this, Lucas, is we've seen our president meeting with other leaders from other countries, and now he's going to the biggest military base there in Qatar before he heads to the UAE. He's going to go shake hands with the men and women who have given up so much to fight for our country. They've left their families, some of them, for 18 months, for a year and a half. So what is the feeling there? What are people saying?
Let's see if we have anything going on in Abu Dhabi here.
As soon as they have more folks stepping up there on the stage. A reminder that we are watching out for President Trump and what he's going to be doing next on the final leg of his Middle Eastern trip. This time he is in Abu Dhabi. Earlier today, we saw him land there, meeting up with several other world leaders, making few remarks to the press. And so we'll see what comes out of this visit later on today. This is a live look there out of Abu Dhabi. And a reminder that we have this live look out of Turkey as we are also waiting for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky here to participate in this discussion with some of the press that's out there in Turkey.
Like I said back when Trump was elected in November of last year, 2025 is going to be a year that has 10 years of history wrapped up into it. It's just, there's so much going on. Now, in the mainstream media, they say he's flooding the zone. It's beyond that. There's a a birthing that's taking place with mankind, a new birth, a new birthing that's taking place. And we're going through contractions, all right, of this new birth of society, a new renaissance. There's a lot of activity, and I definitely can appreciate it because I follow the news a lot, maybe more than I should, but you can just feel the pace is just so much faster compared to the Biden administration.
See what President Zelensky has to say about what went down earlier today. And a bit of a programming note that I do want to remind you all of. Later on this week on Sunday, we are going to be hosting the inauguration of Pope Leo. Taking a look here also at a statement from Vice President J.D. Vance and the fact that he will be present for that inauguration, saying this. The White House, of course. Vice President J.D. Vance will lead a U.S. delegation to Vatican City to attend the inaugural Mass of His Holiness Pope Leo XIV on Sunday, May 18th, 2025. Vice President Vance and Second Lady Usha Vance will be joined by Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Mrs. Jeanette Rubio. Pope Leo XIV is the first American pope. Vice President Vance is the first Catholic convert to serve as vice president. And here at Live Now from Fox, we have got.
You know what would be what pops in my mind is actually a good ticket in 2028 would be Vance Rubio ticket. Now they're going to compete. I suspect that they'll compete during the primaries, but it would be nice to see Vance running as president and Rubio being VP. Okay. So with that, we're still waiting on Trump to speak in Abu Dhabi. So let's just pivot over to Bloomberg here.
It's an amazing part of LA.
It's truly American.
Yes, it is. It's the gateway.
Thank you, G2 Record, for starting our morning early today. That was very, very informative, to say the least. Markets deteriorate, down -185, SPX -24. We're on YouTube, building each and every day. Thank you so much on YouTube. Good morning.
Now, my take on the reason why the equity market is a little bit down today, and it's not down by a lot. Again, there is this, they're waiting for additional positive tariff news to get past the 5,900 barrier. But a lot of flow of money that was on the sidelines and rebalancing was taking place once the escalation was de-escalated with the agreement between the United States and China. So you had a lot of money managers that took money out of the market, all right? Either kept it in cash or they moved, some of these money managers moved it in European markets, which I thought was completely stupid. And so once Bassett had its agreement of understanding and the tariffs went down for the United States and for China to a reasonable level, these money managers were caught off guard and they had to redeploy money into the S&P 500, all right? Because their fund, all right, usually they have a customized fund, all right? They pick different stocks and they sell this fund or this portfolio to their investors, all right, to try to get alpha, all right, more than the benchmark. The benchmark is usually the S&P 500. Well, if this S&P 500 is climbing a lot since the low of 4,820 or so, you're going to have like a 20% return if you deployed at the perfect moment. Most people don't deploy at the perfect moment, but the thing is that people deployed new cash into that scenario. Some of them made 10 to 18% return in 4 weeks. So these money managers were caught off guard. So they had to flow they had to sell their position in Europe or move the cash back into the market. Well, because they rushed in, right, the equities climbed fast. The S&P 500 climbed fast. So right now it's like a calm period, right? It's a calm period because these money managers don't have as much powder that's dry to be able to add into the market. So we're kind of like just consolidating right now. So there's a little bit, and this is what I meant about the trading range between the 5,900 to the 5,750. So it's going to be a trading range for a little while. And then once there's additional positive news that comes out with maybe Japan or South Korea in terms of trade, then you're going to have another leg up. There's going to be enough energy, enough money that's going to flow into the S&P 500 that's going to surpass the 5,900 barrier, and then test the 6,000. And that's the reason why we're seeing what we're seeing. While we're still waiting on Trump to talk, I guess a lot of people are paying attention to the P. Diddy, case. I don't really care. I just really don't care. Let's go to France 24 about the Iranians in the U.S. coming to potentially some agreement with the nuclear deal. France 24, I kind of like listening to.
Technology compresses, then snaps.
Before we go into all of those deals and the business, earlier we heard from Donald Trump giving a press conference in Doha. He said that he believes the US is close to a deal with Iran on its nuclear program.
Well, he did, and it's rather vague, in fact, what he's been saying. That the actual quote was, "We are sort of close to a deal," which leaves us all open to a lot of doubt about what that deal actually is. Now, this is just a few hours after Iran has been saying, in the form of a spokesperson for Ayatollah Khamenei, who is Iran's spiritual leader, that Iran would be willing to forego its nuclear enrichment program in exchange for the lifting of sanctions. Not completely, but to bring it down certainly below the level needed to create a nuclear weapon. Now, at the moment, Iran is enriching uranium to about 60%. That needs to go up to about 90% to be able to be used in a nuclear weapon. But under the 2015 nuclear agreement, which was signed by Barack Obama, of which Donald Trump pulled out later on, that level was due to be brought down to only 3.65%, which is just for civilian use only. So it appears there has been some progress with Iran. There have been a lot of pressure on the Iranian leadership from the United States. There have been talks taking place, all of this in contradiction with what Israel has been calling for, which is attacks against Iran's nuclear installations. So I think that this will be another feather in Donald Trump's cap, and certainly something that he will be hoping for as a result of this visit, because it comes on the heels of an agreement he says he signed with the Houthi rebels to stop attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, and also his plan to try to stop the setting up of Hezbollah bases in Syria following those talks with the new Syrian president. So a lot of movement on that front as well coming from the United States.
Well, foreign policy seems to be sort of overshadowed by the big economic deals that Trump's been making in the Middle East. We just talked about those ones that were signed in Qatar.
Well, you mentioned $1.2 trillion. That is the figure being bandied about by the United States, by Donald Trump, of the deals that he's managed to sign so far since arriving in Saudi Arabia, then moving on to Qatar, moving on today to the United Arab Emirates, the three countries on that Middle Eastern tour. 600 billion in investment, including one of the largest ever purchases of US weapons. That was what was signed in Saudi Arabia. That deal for Boeing aeroplanes signed in Qatar, 210 Boeing aircraft. But there has been a scandal, a lot of raised eyebrows about this Qatari present of an aeroplane being given to the US president, which is estimated to be worth $400 million. That's 100 times the combined value of every presidential gift from foreign governments so far this century. And many in the United States saying this is definitely a conflict of interest between what the US should be standing up for, and that is not receiving presents in exchange for signing business deals. And also that poses the question about how this plane is going to be equipped afterwards. Will there be bugs on board to try to...
I understand the security issue. It's going to take some time to sweep it. And there's not going to be that much use of it. But the thing is that it's a gift. It's a gift. It's a $400 million gift, but we're not paying for it. All right, we're paying for the sweep. All right, which is probably going to, cost, I don't know, 5, 10 million. I don't know, which is a drop in the bucket in terms of the Pentagon. A plane that isn't anchored correctly on the deck of an aircraft carrier is, 30, anywhere from 25 to $30 million. If it falls into the ocean, so it's a free gift for $400 million. 400 million, all right? And Trump brings in to the United States in terms of business deals, like $1 trillion, all right? So don't you think that we are actually on the winning side of this whole trade agreement? I mean, it's just, the liberal logic just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I mean, okay, we're gonna take a plane, and that's so we can do business deals, and those business deals are selling arms and selling additional hardware technology to the Middle East, not buying from the Middle East, selling to the Middle East. So they're giving us a gift, and we are still making money by selling product to them. It'd be the other way around if the liberal logic was correct. The liberal logic, if it was correct, would be, oh, we are going to take your plane for free, and then we're going to buy buy something from the Saudis. It's quite the opposite. I mean, it's just, the liberals are just idiots. I mean, this maybe is the reason why they couldn't get into, into medicine or into engineering. They're just fucking dumb. They're just flat out dumb. Even though I like listening to France 24, but sometimes they have these liberal commentators that, that are anti-Trump. There's a lot of people out there who are anti-Trump. They don't realize that Trump, if you just pay attention to the guy, would you want to be around someone that's a loser all the time or a winner? All right? And literally, the liberals hate Trump so much they would prefer to align themselves with losers. It's hilarious, actually. Trump will betray Israel for personal gain, according to Ambassador Dennis Ross. Let's listen in. This is Times Radio, which is very anti-Trump.
First. I mean, that's not just a slogan for him. When it comes to what he sees as being in our interest, he's going to do it. And he's not really going to do it without much regard for anyone else. And we've seen that now repeatedly. The decision to do the deal with the Houthis. After that, I mean, the truth is just 2 days before that, the Houthis succeeded in having a ballistic missile penetrate Israel and land near the Ben Gurion airport. Then there's a deal that's done without any discussion or coordination or even consultation with the Israelis. The fact was the president decided he wanted to end the attacks. The Houthis were prepared to stop attacking American ships.
President Trump's been at a lavish state dinner in Qatar tonight after signing more multi-billion-dollar business deals with his hosts. These include an order for 160 Boeing jets worth $200 billion, which
Now
Trump
think about
described
that.
as the largest.
Now think about it. That order for Boeing is huge, or huge, depending on where you're from. But that business deal is going to save Boeing, all right, and help Boeing through its financial crisis. And people want to just demonize Trump. I mean, it's just so dumb. It's just so, I mean.
Order of its kind. Earlier, he met the new president of Syria, Ahmed al-Sharaa, for the first high-level meeting between the two countries in 25 years. Donald Trump announced the lifting of US sanctions against Syria and was full of praise for al-Sharaa, a former al-Qaeda commander who's still officially a proscribed terrorist in the US.
Right. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. You know, strong pass. Very strong pass fighter. But he's got a real shot at pulling it together.
Well, tonight in Qatar, the US president also raised the prospect of a deal with Iran, though he set out 3 conditions for any agreement.
I want to make a deal with Iran. I want to do something if it's possible. But for that to happen, it must stop sponsoring terror, halt its bloody proxy wars, and permanently and verifiably cease its pursuit of nuclear weapons. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. I don't imagine there's anybody at this table or anybody in this room that would say they can.
Well, Ambassador Dennis Ross is a former special assistant to President Obama and a former Middle East coordinator under President Clinton. He's also author of Statecraft 2.0, What America Needs to Lead in a Multipolar World, and joins us now. Good evening to you, Dennis.
Good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Great to speak to you. Tell me first of all what you make of Donald Trump's move to bring Syria in from the cold.
Well, I don't think he would have done it without basically Mohammed bin Salman suggesting there's a real opportunity in Syria, a real opportunity because Iran effectively has been forced to leave Syria. Syria right now also is making it, trying to block any weapon smuggling to Hezbollah. But it's not just...
We are powering change every day in New York City by installing solar systems and helping building.
But it's not just what Saudi Arabia is saying, because they think there is a possibility to bring Syria into a much more positive relationship and change the character of Syria. It's clearly also the president spoke to President Erdogan as well, and Erdogan was on the phone in the meeting room with them. So this is, I think, a combination of Erdogan and Mohammed bin Salman suggesting there's an opportunity with Ahmed al-Shara, and it would be a mistake not to take advantage of it. And the only way that Shah has a chance to really establish control over all Syria is if he can demonstrate that the country is moving in a more favorable direction. And at a minimum, at a bare minimum, that requires the lifting of sanctions. And they persuaded the president to do that. I can say it's interesting because I know there were those within the administration who were quite negative about the idea, believing that once an Islamist, always an Islamist, and that's obviously not what has prevailed with President Trump.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because Ahmed al-Shara became leader after Bashar al-Assad was swept from power. But I mean, there has been some pretty serious upsurges of violence in the country. Do you think this is going to help the country on the path to peace, which is clearly what President Trump hopes?
I think it creates an opportunity. Look, Shah still has to prove himself. He has to prove himself in terms of genuinely being against the forces of terror. He has elements within the coalition that he heads that still reflect those attitudes. Can he control them? Clearly, some of the killing that we've seen was provoked by former parts of the Assad regime, but the reaction to those provocations were some pretty significant and widespread killings of Alawis, and it was done by those that, at least putatively, were associated with the new government. Now, the new Shah and his foreign minister Shabani, they basically said that none of that will be tolerated, people will be punished, but they don't control all of the country, and it's not clear that they control all the elements of those who are within the security forces now. So they have a challenge to prove themselves on the outside, but they also have a challenge to take on and demonstrate that they really can govern on the inside and control all the country, something they don't do today.
And President Trump seems to have taken this step, lifting US sanctions against Syria, meeting its new leader without much consultation with Israel. Likewise, his talk of reaching an agreement with Iran, when we know that the Israelis were very keen to get the go-ahead for further bombing attacks on Iran. How would you assess the US-Israeli relationship? I mean, he's not going to Israel on this trip, President Trump.
I think there's several points to be mindful of. Maybe the most important one is that Donald Trump will always put America first. I mean, that's not just a slogan for him. When it comes to what he sees as being in our interests, he's going to do it. And he's not really going to do it without much regard for anyone else. And we've seen that now repeatedly. The decision to do the deal with the Houthis. After that, I mean, the truth is just 2 days before that, the Houthis succeeded in having a ballistic missile penetrate Israel and land near the Ben Gurion airport. Then there's a deal that's done without any discussion or coordination or even consultation with the Israelis. The fact was the president decided he wanted to end the attacks. The Houthis were prepared to stop attacking American ships. By the way, they made it clear they would continue to attack Israel, and they would continue to attack ships that they defined as being somehow connected to Israel, even though that is an extremely broad definition. So Israel's concerns and interests were not taken into account because the president was operating on what he saw as our interests, negotiating with the Iranians, negotiating with Hamas. This is the first administration ever to deal directly with Hamas. Without telling the Israelis discovered it through their intelligence means. So that's a pretty dramatic step. So what we're seeing is a pattern here that the president is pretty much prepared to do those things that he sees as being in our interest as he defines it. The release of the dual citizen Eden Alexander was done again without the Israelis. So I wouldn't say that somehow that there's a crisis in the relationship or that he won't support Israel. I think he generally remains supportive of Israel. But the message he's sending is when he decides it's in his interest as he defines it, when he decides it's in America's interest as he defines it, he's going to pursue that without much regard to where the Israelis are coming from.
And just finally and briefly, if you could, Dennis, I mean, where does this leave the prospect of getting any further serious negotiations underway towards another ceasefire and the release of more hostages from Gaza?
We will see whether or not, even before Trump leaves the air or immediately afterwards, whether there is another deal. I suspect there is at least a 50-50 chance by the time he leaves the region or the day after, there will be another deal where maybe 10 of the remaining live hostages will be released, a 45-day ceasefire. Hamas will be interpreting this as by the end of 45 days that the conflict will end. The Israelis will say no, that it will continue. I believe that Trump increasingly wants to see an end to the conflict. So that's, I think, the thing to be watching for. If there isn't a deal within the next couple of days, a partial deal of the sort I described, then there probably won't be one for a while because I think the Israelis really will resume much more intensive effort within Gaza. But I also think at some point Trump's patience will run out. He will want to see the war end.
Ambassador Dennis Ross, former special assistant to President Obama.
All right, let's pivot over to Bloomberg here.
Of course, we'll have NVIDIA reporting next week, and that'll bring her right back to the front burner. Walmart, what's happening in Arkansas?
Well, speaking of all we talk about is tariffs, I am very much related story there. Walmart down 3% at the moment, so very some of those opening losses there. We did get another solid quarter of sales and earnings growth, but it really is the company's outlook that is shaking up the investor sentiment. They are cautioning that tariffs, increasing economic turbulence means that it is expecting to raise prices, according to Chief Financial Officer John David Rainey, saying that if you've not already seen it, price hikes will happen in May and will become more pronounced. And so keep in mind, of course, Walmart is just the opening salvo for retailers in the U.S. We have Home Depot and Target reporting next week, or in the coming weeks. And so that begs the question as well, will these same retailers raise their prices as well? And what would that mean for the American consumer?
I mean, you see, I get Walmart can push through price increases, but how about
All right, so if you take a look at the dashboard, we have BITO, which is the ETF for Bitcoin long. That's trading at 2150, and like I said, there's a support level at 2148. Intraday trading, it went below that slightly. It went to 2143, so it's retesting that 2148 again. So if it breaks, most likely we're going to see further down leg, and Bitcoin will continue to go down a little bit. And I think the reason why Bitcoin's going down is, again, you have asset managers that had to deploy quite a bit of money into the S&P 500 so they don't feel like they're missing out because it rapidly went up, and there's just not enough money out there to deploy in riskier assets or more exotic assets like Bitcoin.
Come to the United Arab Emirates. What we're really waiting on is whether or not we are going to see more of those deals. We've reported that likely, given the fact this administration has been weighing it, we could see the Emirates get their hands on more than 1 million chips, advanced chips, the likes of NVIDIA. And this comes on the heels in March when Sheikh Tahmoon, I reported, had this meeting with the president, and then they said they're willing to invest $1.4 trillion. They need to get their hands on the technology first.
We have a Jordanian research note that says, from tariff man to global salesman, and really, we have one headline after another just about the trade deals that Trump has been making. Can you talk to us more about his singling out of Tim Cook and why that is the case?
Well, he's already talking about India and how India is ready to lower their tariff barriers. This has been a long time coming, given the fact that we did see Prime Minister Modi be one of those first in line to go to the White House to see President Trump after he was inaugurated as the 47th president. And those discussions started immediately. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do get some sort of announcement during this 90-day reprieve that India has reached an agreement with the United States. While the president was talking about India, he said that he had a difficult conversation. He's a little bit annoyed, it seems, with Tim Cook of Apple. He said he spoke to him yesterday, and he said, look, we don't want you building your plants in India. What we've seen Apple do is trying to de-risk out of China and move their supply chains, their manufacturing from China to India. And the president's saying, we want you to move that manufacturing to the United States. What is interesting is that throughout this entire trip, the president has been flanked by CEOs. He is viewing this entire trip through a lens of economic relationships. And that has to do with the private sector as well. On Tuesday in Riyadh, the president saw Jensen Huang of NVIDIA in the audience, said, my friend Jensen's here. So excited you're here. I don't see Tim Cook here, but you are. And then today, while he was speaking in Doha before he touched down in Abu Dhabi, he once again called out Tim Cook. And obviously, he is notably a CEO that is absent on this world tour.
So anytime, Anne-Marie, that the head of the United States is in that part of the world, the Middle East, the discussion moves to Iran. President Trump saying that the U.S. and Iran are closer to reaching a nuclear deal. What's the latest reporting on that?
Well, the president was talking about, you might have seen that report in NBC News when Iran was talking about what they are willing to do. And the president once again put out an olive branch. He did say we do this the intelligent way, aka a diplomatic deal, or the brutal way, which would likely mean a strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. What we saw in the NBC News report, though, this was a key top advisor to the Ayatollah sitting down with NBC News. What they outlined was that they would cede from going after a nuclear weapon, but they would still enrich uranium for a civil program. Basically, what they outlined was exactly what the president removed the United States from almost 7 days to the date. It was May 8th in 2018 that the president decided that the U.S. would leave the JCPOA. So on the surface, what Iran is offering right now is exactly what the president, that deal that he left. The president has a very hard line that Tehran cannot get a nuclear weapon. But throughout this trip, he's also spoke about other grievances he has with the regime, which is their support of proxies in the region, like Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. We have seen talks. There's been 4 rounds of talks between Tehran and Washington. It's been mediated by the Omanis in Muscat. But at the moment, The president continues to put this olive branch out there,
Right.
but what Iran has offered in public is exactly what the president said 7 years ago was unwilling to accept.
And Marie, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate all your reporting during this trip. President Trump oversees some fantastic work. Anne-Marie Horton, Chief Political Correspondent, co-anchor of Bloomberg Surveillance, joining us remotely from Abu Dhabi, along with President Trump as he continues his trip today throughout the Mid-East. S&P 500 down 19 points. It's about 0.3%. The NASDAQ off about 150 points, 0.8%. So a little bit of a sell-off here. We got some economic data. We'll break it down with Michael McLeod. This is Bloomberg.
Okay, we might go to live now. They're talking about Ukraine peace talks. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very strong antioxidant. It's the second pillar of my core protocol. By soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the stress in a cell, and you're helping to improve the health of the mitochondria. So what that will mean is that the cell will perform better, they'll have more ATP, and your tissues will perform better, your organ systems will perform better, your immune system will perform better, your endocrine system, your neurons. So it's a very potent antioxidant. All right, you take a teaspoon a day, every day, take it on an empty stomach for best absorption. If you're working out, take it before your workout, and it'll soak up the free radicals that you generate during your workout, and you will recover quicker. But it's important to take it every day. Take a teaspoon a day. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil. It has to be in an oil for you to absorb C60. It's very important. Now, C60, you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It is cheaper per ounce if you buy the higher ounce configuration. In addition, C60 is going to also help with your neural health. You'll soak up those free radicals, reduce that stress on the neuron, improve your mitochondria in your neuron. You need lots of mitochondria to produce the ATP and to be able to create those neurotransmitters. So your neuron will be able to fire those neurotransmitters, and you have that connection between that neural network, and you have cognition. All right. So if the healthier those neurons are, the faster that neural network will work, the better your memory, the better your kinematic balancing, your ability to balance will be. If you look at people that are older, they think slower, their memory starts to fade, they move slower. But if you improve your neural health, you'll be able to think faster, have better memory, have better kinematic coordination. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the C60. It's a major pillar of my anti-aging protocol. All right. I've been taking C60 since 2016. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the C60. Take it every day, a teaspoon a day. Extremely important. And what you'll notice is that you're slowly reducing the aging process. Your body is healing, your immune system is better, your endocrine system is better, your neurons are better. And when you take a look at yourself a year later, you'll notice visually that you look younger. All right. Now, it also helps to soak up those free radicals in your bloodstream. And free radicals in your bloodstream are bad because they oxidize LDL. So if you have oxidized LDL, you're increasing your chances of plaque formation. So if you want to help with your cardiovascular health and reduce plaque formation, soaking up free radicals in your bloodstream are very important. So please go to my store, get the C60, get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, or in extra virgin olive oil. Take it every day, and you're going to see huge differences in your health. And you're going to just notice that you have more energy, and just all these different systems that I talked about are going to be starting to perform better. And you're going to visually see a difference in your health and in your wellness. So please go to my store, get the C60, use discount 5, and you get $5 off any order.
We have many conditions to the aggressor, but if we agreed, if the United States of America made certain steps and we are in dialogue, we accept it. And not only these steps were made by Ukraine. Many of the diplomatic steps we made. To come to the format that could even a tiny little bit bring us closer to the end of the war. But this cannot be unilaterally, only from one end, and the pressure cannot be only directed one way. Which is why we very much want that there is a demonstration of pressure against Russia, against Putin, sanctions, European sanctions, American sanctions, at the very least sanctions.
First of all, we are good friends and partners. And I don't want to go further to details about our conversation because we had big agenda of our also bilateral relations between our countries and different directions of industries, and which are very important for us and how to strengthen us. We spoke also about the coalition of willingness, about the security of the sea, about grain corridor. We had big bilateral agenda. We spoke some hours about a lot of things, but of course the priority is this. The priority is ceasefire. The priority is to be here today. That's why I'm here, and that's why I'm underlining it again and again. The high level of representatives of our group. We have to want to do it for, you know. That's it. But
what is interesting, from my perspective, what is interesting, why isn't Putin taking the off-ramp that Trump is giving him? Trump is adequately giving Putin an opportunity to take an off-ramp and de-escalate the issue between Russia and Ukraine. Now, yes, NATO expansion was a big problem. The Euro whiner from Ukraine, Zelensky, is a problem. But the thing is that if you de-escalate this, it allows for the United States to normalize relations with Russia, and peace and prosperity and will ensue, and we'll have an ally in the long run for a two-front war against China. So why isn't Putin willing to take the off-ramp? It could be that he actually has an unstable existence within Russia, that he may not have full control of what's really going on. Something's not right. A rational person would de-escalate. He's applying an irrational tactical move with this. Why? So it might be that Putin's afraid that you de-escalate, the troops come back home, and then the population starts to realize how many dead actually stacked up, what the actual dead count is. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that the Russian people think that the death count for the Russian soldiers is actually lower than what it really is. And so when the war ends and the soldiers don't come home, that's proof positive that there were more war dead than what was telegraphed to the people. It's going to cause instability for his regime. So there may be a house of cards that's starting to fall for Putin internally. And that's the reason why he doesn't want to take the off-ramp. Some people say that maybe he's sick, and that he can't even go to these trips. Maybe not. I don't know. He does seem like there's something wrong with him in terms of health, but it's hard to determine what that exactly is. But why isn't Putin taking the off-ramp? That's a big question. And I suspect that he has an unstable regime in Russia, and probably also his economy.
Best option here, because you're going to get a nice strong yield, and although the Fed didn't lower the rate the last time, they will eventually, even if it's late, they will eventually lower the rates further, maybe a couple more times this year.
What kind of data are you looking at when you make decisions for your clients? With Bank of America yesterday publishing this interesting chart that basically shows the gap between hard and soft data at their widest in 25 years. So it's really, I think, a confusing market. It's hardware to look for signals. Where do you find them?
Well, I think we always have to stick to the data because a lot of the soft data is based on emotion. And I would agree that it's about as polarized as could be right now. So always go back to, well, what does the data indicate? But as far as investor data, I mean, that's a very personal thing. It all has to do with the goals, their appetite for risk, and surely diversification should be in everybody's portfolio because then you hedge your bets at it.
Nancy, thank you so much for joining us there. We always appreciate it. Nancy Daoud, a private wealth advisor for Ameriprise Financial. She's based down there in Miami, Florida, joining us via that Zoom thing. We had a lot of economic data today. We had retail sales. We had some inflation data from the producer price level. We had initial jobless claims, a lot going on there. Let's check in with Michael McKee. He pays attention to this stuff. International economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg News, joining us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Hey, Mike, I look at retail sales. I want to get a sense of how the consumer's doing. The headline number, 0.1%, a little bit better than the consensus number, but a slowdown from last period. Then I look at something called the control group. I'm not sure what that is, but that was supposed to be positive 0.3%. It was negative 0.2%. What did you take away from retail sales?
The consumer's definitely slowing down. You look at the control group number is the one that you want to pay attention to. They take out, the control group is basically the group of retail sales categories that go into GDP.
Okay.
They take out autos because the retail sales numbers are based on dollars, and the unit sales is what goes into GDP. Okay. So they take that out. They take out gasoline because when you're looking at the core, gasoline goes up and down in price. That has the major issue. And they take out building materials because that shows up under the housing categories. So when you do all that, you end up with a decline of 0.2% in spending. And we were kind of expecting, given the lousy consumer sentiment numbers, that people would pull back at some point. And it looks like they started to do that.
What about, we have PPI, that decline was a shock. How do you square the two data then?
Actually, I think both are kind of related to tariffs. I mean, the tariffs and all that news is the major reason people cite for their lousy attitudes. and so they may have acted on that. When you look at PPI, a lot of it, most of the decline in the headline comes from services. Goods prices were unchanged, but services were down 0.7%. And a lot of that, most of that was in trade services. You can look at the core rate that is PPI ex food, energy, and trade, month over month down 0.1%. But you look at the year over year, it went from 3.5% to 2.9% in 1 month, a big drop. And the reason for that is trade is not trade like chips and everything we've been talking about with everything going on with tariffs. It's margins for retailers and wholesalers. And so what that's telling us is that companies were accepting lower margins, and probably that was because they were accepting the business of paying for the tariffs in the meantime. That may change, but you see the tariff effect in both of those numbers.
So, Mike, I mean, we're hearing rhetoric from President Trump and his administration about walking back some of these tariff levels, most notably with China. But the fact is, net, today and going forward, our tariffs are multiples higher than where they were at the beginning of the year. Has somebody kind of cranked that into the model to say, what does that mean for GDP? What does that mean for inflation? Because I still feels like we're double-digit tariffs now versus low single digits before. That's got to have an impact.
Not only have they cranked it into their models, but they have cranked it and recranked it and recranked it as the president changes his mind. The latest feeling is that the odds of recession have dimmed, but growth is going to be very slow, somewhere between 0 and 1% for the year. And that we will see unemployment rise and we'll see inflation rise because of the tariffs. Now, you can't bet on that because the president still hasn't given us details on the tariffs. There's 2 different 90-day cooling off periods underway here. So we're waiting for all that kind of information, but the general view is that things are going to deteriorate. And so we've been waiting for that to show up in the hard data, which is starting to do now. We had the Empire and Philadelphia Fed regional manufacturing indexes, both of which were negative, but their prices paid numbers jumped significantly. The Empire one was the highest in more than 2 years at 59 and then 59.8 for Philadelphia. So the inflation effect is starting to come into all of the data. So we should start to pick up speed on that as the month goes by and we get more and more numbers.
Yeah, and the stock market has retraced much of its sell-off here, but boy, you still don't see any real move higher in the dollar. So that kind of gets everybody's attention here. So we'll see it in the data coming forward, and we will check in with Mike McKee when that data is released. Michael McKee joining us here, international economics and policy correspondent for Bloomberg News, joining us live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Coming up, Lindsay Dutch, Bloomberg Intelligence Consumer Hardlines Senior Analyst on Dick's Sporting Goods. Buying Foot Locker. We know those brands. And then also coming up, we have some tape back from JP Morgan Chairman and CEO Jamie Dimon speaking to Bloomberg Television's anchor, Francine.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. Magnesium is extremely important for brain function, and magnesium helps the efficacy of vitamin D3. So take the vitamin and zinc, help with your brain function and your immune system. Vitamin C and magnesium will help with your skin, your immune system, and your brain health. Stack these together to get the max benefit that boost up that immune system. Drink it with filtered water. And again, magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Very important. So get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Really important. And another thing that is very important is that foundation for your gut, helping your gut biome. Extremely important. Taking a probiotic, like the veggie cap version that I have in my hand, or the powdered version, which is what I prefer to take. But either one, very high quality, take it every day. In the powdered version, you get a small little scooper, you just scoop it with soft foods, filtered water. But take it every day. And what will happen is that you're going to notice that you're going to be able to absorb your nutrients better, your metabolism is going to be better, your communication between your gut and your liver will improve, so your liver function is going to improve. The communication between your gut and your brain will improve. You'll have less brain fog, you'll be able to concentrate, you'll be less irritable, you'll sleep better, and your gut will have less inflammation by taking a good probiotic and improving your gut health. And by bringing down that inflammation, your immune system is going to improve. That mucosal lining in that inner lining of your gut, the inner lining of your intestinal tract will thicken. And so it's going to protect your gut. So your immune system is going to get better, and the concentrations of IgA, which is a type of antibody, will increase, further improving your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics, either the veggie cap version or the powdered version. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. It's a great way to start that foundation, build off of it. And by improving your gut, you'll also notice that your skin is improved too over time. So please go to my store, get the probiotics, get the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Click the link that's in the description box of this video and it'll take you to my website. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. I want to go to Al Jazeera for a second here. I think they're advertising. This isn't advertising for Al Jazeera.
Vehicles of mobilization are required, and Channel 14 has stepped into that breach.
Channel 14, since the beginning of the genocide, it was very clearly the chief insider for genocide in Gaza. The rest of the Israeli media landscape, there's pride in promoting the pictures of suffering, the imageries of total destruction, thousands of people under the baking sun, walking endlessly from one area to another. These all are coming out in Israeli media.
What jumps out about the international coverage is the volume of it. There has been a noticeable drop, which, editorially speaking, is indefensible, given the stage the Gaza story has reached, the cumulative effect of Israel's blocking of food and humanitarian aid to Palestinians, so many of them children, who have gone from hunger.
All right. There's a little bit of a movement with the BITO ETF. It's trading at 21.45. Again, like I said, there is a support level at 21.48. It's below that support level for the intraday trading. There's going to be further sell-off with Bitcoin, so we're going to see some pressure on BITO ETF. The next major support level is 20.
Bloomberg Television and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm John Tucker, the Bloomberg Newsroom, with this Bloomberg Business Flash. Stocks right now declining, yet mixed economic data. Shares of United Health Group diving on a report it faces a criminal probe. Walmart is falling as it warned of higher prices due to the tariffs. Worst performing group in the SP 500, that's worth a look. Energy, we could actually see more supply because of the optimism of a possible deal between the U.S. and Iran. Mark Malik at Muriel Siebert & Company says also the tariff turmoil isn't over yet.
Stagflation has certainly been something we've been a little bit concerned about. Obviously, we've had some recent developments in these negotiations. However, if you look at the numbers, right, it seems like the president's still settling in somewhere around the 10% level for tariffs.
Right now, the S&P 500 down 17 points. The Dow down 116 points. NASDAQ 100 to 10 points lower. Most active Foot Locker those shares dropped 83%. By the way, the barista strike at Starbucks growing. Baristas at 100 unionized Starbucks locations have now walked off the job since Sunday with the company's new dress code. They have to wear tops. They have to wear black tops.
Black tops.
Everybody should wear a top.
Haven't they always just worn black top?
No, it used to be like you could wear anything. Now it has to be black. They figure you're going to pay for it. So anyway, that's the update.
All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Alex Steele, who's on assignment today. I'm Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming well on YouTube. A little M&A trade here. Dick's Sporting Goods to buy Foot Locker for $2.4 billion. I guess if you're a Foot Locker shareholder, you're pretty happy. Stock's up 84% here today. Not so much on the Dick's Sporting Goods side. That stock's down 15% here. Let's break it down with Lindsay Dutch, Consumer Hardlines Senior Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from Princeton. I remember when she was an associate. Now she's a senior analyst. How cool is that? Hey, Lindsay, talk to us about this deal. Why did it take place and why now?
Yeah, thanks, Paul, for having me. It is quite an interesting deal. As you mentioned, on the Foot Locker side, super positive. I mean, this company has been struggling to execute on a turnaround. Prelim same-store sales for first quarter down 2.6%, expectations for flattish. And then you have Dick's Sporting Goods, which has been outperforming the past couple of years, grabbing market share, sales better than expected in the first quarter. So from the Dick's side, there is some skepticism about, like, why are you doing this deal? And after thinking about it, I think there is a tremendous opportunity for Dick's in terms of growth prospects longer term. Their addressable market is going to more than double to $300 billion as they enter a global footprint. And they move like slightly away from sport to grab that lifestyle customer, which they weren't really targeting before.
Could this deal tee up scrutiny at the FTC? I mean, they both sell sneakers, but some make the case that they're same but different because they really have different markets.
Well, fortunately, I talked to our antitrust expert, Jen Rhee, a little bit earlier today, and she is not too concerned here about FTC pushing back on this deal. A couple reasons why. One, Dick's' retail footprint is pretty small, 800 stores across the U.S. Foot Locker's is obviously much bigger, but the concern would come if market share in an individual market is sort of too high with a combination. Given the FTC right now, she thinks that store divestitures would easily satisfy any concern, but she thinks that concern might be minimal at this point.
Dick's Sporting Goods stock down 15% here. Talk to us about valuation here. Is the market saying, hey, maybe you guys overpaid here?
So I don't think it's an overpay. So they're buying Foot Locker for 0.3 times price to sales with that $2.4 billion valuation on the deal. That's quite low for the opportunity that they could get. I think the real concern is the two businesses are moving at opposite trajectories. So, Dick's, again, outperforming, grabbing that customer with their focus on sports. And this deal is contrast with that. Foot Locker is more of a lifestyle focus. They have higher exposure to a lower income consumer. That has been part of their challenges. They also, get 60% of their inventory is Nike. So it is a different shift in the business. Foot Locker is seeing those same-store sales continue to decline, and that's really a contrast. So there's skepticism about that. Dick's has, though, executed its own turnaround in the past couple of years. So we see these long-term growth prospects as worth that 0.3 price to sales multiple, and that Dick's will now have to prove that they can turn around another business.
Lindsay, real quick, just give us a refresh on what the tariff situation is in that business, because I'm thinking it's really high.
So the exposure to China might be lower than you'd think. We don't have disclosures on specifics from Dick's, but it's relatively low imports coming from China, and it's mostly focused on their hard lines like sports equipment business. For shoes, a lot of that is coming out of Vietnam. So yes, we're going to see higher prices likely with the higher tariffs, maybe on that 10% rate as of right now. So there is a headwind of that. But we think for some of those national brands, that price increase is going to just get directly passed through to the consumer.
Great. All right, Lindsay, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Lindsay Dutch, she's a Consumer Hardlines Senior Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from Princeton, New Jersey. Well, today, JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, he spoke exclusively to Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix at JP Morgan's annual Global Markets Conference in Paris today. Let's listen in to that conversation.
There's a lot going on. It's trade wars, markets up and down. What did you learn in the last month?
Not much. Other than that we have all this uncertainty. Some preceded the new administration, like we had large deficits, interest rates going up, inflation going up, and some are, tariffs and things. And of course, the geopolitical situation is very tense, very difficult, and hard to resolve.
Okay, so if you forget projections, numbers, what's your hunch? Is the U.S. going to go into recession or not?
Look, I'm going to defer to economists who give it about a 50% chance. I think all these things are probably inflationary a little bit more and slowing down the economy. If there's a recession, I don't know how big it'll be or how long it'll last. Hopefully we'll avoid it, but I wouldn't take it off the table at this point.
If you look at, the trade war and then the somewhat reconciliation between the U.S. and China, does it hold?
I think it's the right thing to do is to back off of some of that stuff, to have an engaged in conversation. I'm grateful they did the U.S.-UK deal. It's an agreement in principle, so, there's a lot of uncertainty still, and there's a lot of uncertainty still in the China thing, but at least we started. It obviously calmed down the markets. That's not the reason to do it, but the markets, do vote or something like that, and so there's still uncertainty to resolve. There's 90-day triggers a lot of these things, and hopefully they will be resolved. But they're complex. I don't expect immediate resolution to satisfaction of everybody in 90 days.
But do you expect markets to settle from here because we had a little bit more of a blueprint, or could volatility pick back up at any second?
Markets are quite unpredictable. I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there that you can't discount. War in Ukraine, terror in the Middle East, Iran, huge deficits, our tax bill, which I would like to see a good tax bill passed. The tariffs, the action.
Bitcoin is trading at 101.6. And the BITO ETF is below the support level. It's trading at 21.43 right now. Intraday low was 21.38. So definitely a sell-off in Bitcoin. Oil is having a little bit of a problem too. It's trading at 61.49. There may be a potential buy opportunity once it breaks 61. We'll see.
Yes, because when the volatility is a very simplistic way to look at it. Spreads gap out and traders make more money if there's more volume. So we had both this time, more volatility, more volume. Because very often you have a lot of volatility and spreads gap out, there's much less volume. So you've seen examples where there's good volatility and there's bad volatility. This one happened to be good. The next go around may not be so good.
Jamie, when it comes to financials, I mean, a lot of, non-bank entrants are making quite a lot of waves. Citadel, Jane Street. Is that a concern for the banks? Should it be a problem for the banks?
I wouldn't call it a problem. They're both clients, very capable. But I've always had the view there are a lot of competitors out there, and all the major banks are back. I think that's a good thing for the world, and maybe that's always for JP Morgan.
All righty. Well, let's talk about another great stack here that's going to help with your cardiovascular health and your pancreatic health. Digestive enzyme complex brings down the load on your pancreas. When you get older, once you turn about age 40, your pancreas doesn't work as well. It's not as robust, no matter how healthy you are. And I'm pretty healthy. So you should be taking digestive enzyme complex to help reduce the load on your pancreas so you can break up your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your lipids. You'll be able to digest these easier, and you'll be able to absorb your nutrients. Really important, especially if you're age 40 or older. But if you are an athlete, younger or older, you would benefit from digestive enzyme complex because it'll be able to break up your pre and your post fueling for your workout and reduce the load on your pancreas. So take digestive enzyme complex if you're age 40 or older, or if you're an athlete, younger or older. Very important. Help with the health of your pancreas. Now, in terms of your cardiovascular health, this is a professional show. In terms of your cardiovascular health, take omega-3. Omega-3 will help bring down systemic inflammation, but also omega-3 helps to prevent the red blood cells from over sticking, so it's reducing clots. And omega-3 will help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. And by lowering your LDL level, you're reducing the chances of plaque formation, because less LDL means less oxidized LDL, which means less plaque. So take omega-3 every day. So a great stack would be help with your pancreatic health and your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Click the link that's in the description to get to the website. The website, again, is the-studio-reykjavik.com. I want to play this Fox Business video here.
And has sort of agreed to the terms. They're not going to make out, I call it in a friendly way, nuclear dust. We're not going to be making any nuclear dust in Iran. And we've been strong. I want them to succeed. I want them to end up being a great country, frankly, but they can't have a nuclear weapon. I think we're getting close to maybe doing a deal without having to do this. There's 2 steps. There's a very, very nice step, and there's a violent step. The violence like people haven't seen before. And I hope we're not going to have to do this. I don't want to do the second steps. We're in very serious negotiations with Iran for long-term peace. And if we do that, it'll be fantastic.
President Trump speaking on Iran at a business roundtable in Doha, Qatar this morning. The country reportedly ready to make a deal on its nuclear ambitions in exchange for sanctions being lifted. Joining me now is former CIA station chief and Fox News contributor Daniel Hoffman. Dan, great to see you. Your reaction?
Well, the question is what that deal would entail. Would Iran agree not to enriching uranium anymore? That's been the demand from the Trump administration. And then what, if any, sunset clauses would be associated with the deal? We still haven't heard a lot about Iran's ballistic missile program, as well as their support to proxy terrorists. I think that we're in the position now, a better position than arguably ever before, to strike a favorable deal for our national security. Iran, their defense, air defenses have been destroyed by Israel, and Israel has also decimated Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran's proxy terrorists. We've taken the fight to the Houthis. So there's an opportunity for a deal, but as the president rightly points out, if a deal doesn't get made, then we have that threat of military action that we may have to use.
Well, should we be trusting the Iranians when they say we're willing to do a deal and perhaps not enrich uranium?
Well, definitely not trusting them. To sort of paraphrase President Reagan, I guess I would say rather than trust and verify, I would mistrust and verify. We're going to need a lot of inspections and a lot of people on the ground to ensure that Iran is complying with whatever deal that we agree to.
Yeah, and of course, President Trump knows that. But let me get your take on the big meeting today in Turkey. Ukrainian officials meeting with Russians in Istanbul this morning for discussions on ending the war between those 2 countries. Ukrainian President Zelensky said to be there. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's not going, but he sent a junior delegation of advisors. Zelensky described that move as decorative. President Trump is not attending. Watch this.
Oh, I didn't anticipate. I actually said, why would he go if I'm not going? Because I wasn't going to go. I wasn't planning to go. I would go, but I wasn't planning to go. But we have people there. Marco, as you know, is doing a fantastic job. Marco's there, Secretary of State, and we have people there. But I didn't think it was possible for Putin to go if I'm not there.
Dan, what can come out of this meeting, do you think? And what is your take on the fact that Putin won't even go?
Yeah, so the original discussion was about Putin and Zelensky meeting, and President Trump rightly said that he would show up and join those meetings. Putin deliberately sent, as you said, a junior delegation led by his presidential aide, Vladimir Medinsky. Putin wants to carry on Istanbul negotiations from 2022 with unreasonable demands on Ukraine, that there would be limits on the size of Ukraine's military and no foreign military assistance for Ukraine, obviously no NATO membership, no peacekeepers in Ukraine, all things that are untenable that don't provide Ukraine any sort of security guarantees that Russia won't launch an attack in the future. What Putin wants is to create the appearance of carrying on negotiations while simultaneously he inflicts harm on Ukraine by carrying on this barbaric war. He doesn't want the secondary sanctions that Senator Lindsey Graham is talking about delivering against Russia. And he's trying to maybe forestall any U.S. Congressional action against Russia.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been watching President Trump on the world stage this week. It's been an historic trip to the Middle East. Of course, he said that he would lift the sanctions on Syria. He's asking Syria to normalize relations with Israel and join the Abraham Accords in exchange for dropping those sanctions on the country. The president discussed that earlier today as well. And here's a bit, Raj.
We took out the sanctions, and that's been, I didn't even realize it's been many, many years that they've had sanctions. And as you know, there was a very big change at the top. And I thought that we have to give them a chance. They really have no chance with the sanctions. They were very biting. I met the new leader of the country, and he's got a strong past. I'll be very nice. He's got a strong past, but I liked him a lot. I think he'll be a great representative, and we'll see. We're going to give him a fighting chance by taking off the sanctions.
Another trust but verify situation here with Syria, Dan, right?
Yeah, and the Congress will have to lift those sanctions while simultaneously we deal with a lot of very challenging issues with Syria, including any terrorists in Syria. We're looking for that new Syrian government to work with us against terrorist threats to our nation. Chemical weapons are still in Syria. We have to deal with that. Also, Iranian militias and ensuring that Syria is no longer used as a land bridge for Iran to provide material support to Hezbollah in Lebanon. So there are a lot of outstanding issues behind the scenes, Maria. I expect that John Ratcliffe's Central Intelligence Agency operatives are working closely with their Syrian counterparts in the General Intelligence Directorate on those specific issues. And that's what's likely happening so that we can determine the extent to which Syria is really serious about working with us. But the president has offered a major carrot, and I think that's potentially going to influence Syria's decision-making in a positive way.
He sure has. And, you just went through a whole list of things we've got to be aware of with regards to Syria. But when you look at what this president has been able to do, even just looking at the Abraham Accords that he put in place in his first term, now asking the Saudis to join the Abraham Accords. I spoke with General Jack Keane earlier this week and posed the question to him. Watch this. The president said he was this close to getting Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords. Do you think that can be achieved in this term?
Yes, I think it's absolutely possible. It's certainly how the war ends in Gaza is really an issue here. The Saudis were very close to it, and it was a primary reason for, not the primary reason, but it was one of the reasons that Hamas attacked, because they saw normalization on the horizon taking place. And that was the reality of it. And that's why Iran so strongly supported what Hamas was doing.
It's pretty incredible, Dan. What do you think?
I agree with General Keane. Look, Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, has emphasized that there won't be further discussion about the Abraham Accords until there's a Palestinian state or movement towards a Palestinian state. And General Keene's right, that was certainly strategically the impetus behind Iran supporting Hamas's brutal terrorist attack on Israel. So that we've got to get to some sort of a solution in Gaza, I think, before we move forward. But the fact that we're discussing this now is important because it's all part of this kaleidoscope of the Middle East where everything is so intricately interwoven. And that's the challenge that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has to deal with, along with the rest of the folks in the administration implementing the president's strategy.
All right, we'll be getting updates from the Secretary of State over the coming days. Dan Hoffman, always good to see you, so thank you.
Like that. Walmart stock, that's falling after warning price increases are coming. Did Sporting Goods buy Foot Locker? The price tag there, $2.4 billion. That has Foot Locker surging today. Shares of Foot Locker up close to 85%. Barbara Doran at DB8 Capital Partners says, you know what, the tariff uncertainty, that is still looming large over what has become an expensive stock market.
A 21 PE, we're back to that, up from 18 times just a month ago. So I think the market takes a pause. And I think with the uncertain, people are taking their eye off the ball in terms of the trade tariffs are still there. And right now, the blended rate is probably at 17.8%.
And right now, the S&P 500, 11 points lower. That's down 0.2%, 58.81 on the index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, 74 points lower. That's down 0.2. The Nasdaq 100, 67 points lower, down to 0.3%. Yields are falling. The 2-year is down to 3.98. That's down 6 basis points. The 10-year, the benchmark, down 7 basis points. And that is at 446. And we check the markets for you all day long, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Isabel and Paul.
All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Alex Steele. She's down in some oil refinery somewhere on the Gulf Coast having fun. I'm Paul Sweetie. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. We're streaming live on YouTube as well, so check us out there. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweetie with Isabel Lee, and we're joined by Bloomberg's Christine Aquino.
Hi there, Paul. Well, let's talk about Steris, shall we? Because that stock is rocketing today. That's up more than 8% at the moment. And it's a provider of infection prevention products. They just reported their earnings for the fourth quarter. Life sciences revenue, that was really the headline there, that the average estimates. And 5% of their analysts are noting that its operating margin and earnings finished on a high note. Also, the fact that its full year guidance for 2026 is bracketing street estimates shows that's a nice starting point for its ability to absorb the impact of tariffs. What about DeER? This stock is also surging. Yeah, it is as well. So that's extending earlier gains. It's now up nearly 5%. So doing well today. We don't talk about this much because, it's a maker of tractors for farms. That's not particularly eye-catching on any other day. But today it is because it surged to a record. Its earnings beat the highest of analyst estimates. It did, however, trim its profit outlook for the year. As we know, the farm economy has been challenged. Tractor sales have been trending lower, but most investors are expecting the market to bottom out this year and a rebound in 2026. And looks like DeER is perfectly positioned to capitalize on that.
All right, what else you got for us?
Looking at T-Mobile as well, that stock is up nearly 3%, up 2.8% at the moment. And it's getting some good news from overseas, actually, because it operates at Deutsche Telekom over in Germany. And that company reported first quarter profit that topped estimates, which really is seen as a sign of resilience in its home market. It also raised its EBITDA forecast for the year, which reflects a similar move by T-Mobile in the U.S. when it reported its own results for the first quarter last month.
Are any of you T-Mobile users?
I used to be, but now I'm Verizon.
You're Verizon.
I'm Verizon too.
I'm Verizon. JT?
I have to check. I'm not really sure. No, Verizon. Yes, I do have a phone. It is confirmed. I got rid of the BlackBerry.
Okay.
Verizon.
Very good. All right, so you got the T-Mobile. A lot of people, Charlie Pellet is a T-Mobile user and swears by it.
It's really, I don't see any difference. It's frictionless for me as long as I get to keep my mobile. I used to be T-Mobile, but then the head of the family said, let's move.
Okay. Very good. All right. Yeah, speaking of head of the families, we are Verizon people. For more conversations like this, subscribe to our new Stock Movers reports. Listen to 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. Let's check in with Mari Shore. She's a senior equity analyst at Columbia Threadneedle. She's up in Boston. We'd love to talk to her when we get the retail sales number. She really spends a lot of time looking at the retailers, the consumer, that kind of thing. So a real helpful voice to us. Mari, what did you make of the retail sales here? I mean, I guess there's some noise here about.
There's definitely a pressure on natural gas. It's selling now below 3.4. So natural gas is selling off, and oil is trading at 61.34. There may be a buying opportunity if it breaks 61.
In April versus March, but on a month-over-month basis, we did see softness in April versus March, given the pull forward that we saw in March ahead of some tariff driven price increases that the consumer anticipated in some big ticket categories like autos. And you know, when I look and really step back and just getting off of Walmart's earnings call, I think their tone on the consumer is very consistent. Obviously, tariffs are creating a lot of noise in the spending trends, but you know, in their words, the consumer is still very focused on value and speed of delivery. And that is what we've been seeing for years now coming out of the pandemic.
I'm glad you brought up consumer because for Walmart, we saw traffic, which is the number of shoppers, less of a boost to the figure than ticket. What does that tell you? That maybe there are less shoppers, but they're buying more expensive things, or at least higher amounts of tickets?
Well, right. So that could either say they're coming in less frequently, and when they are in, they're buying a lot more, right? They're stocking up more, or to your point, they're buying more expensive things. But we did see relative weakness in their general merchandise category. We saw like their, you know, food category is up mid-single digits. Health and wellness was up high teens. A lot of that is GLP-1s. And general merchandise for them was actually down slightly, which is worse than what we saw in Q4. And so I think it suggests that the consumer is, you know, coming to Walmart for their stock up trip, which is typically what we've seen with Walmart. But, you know, I think a lot of that intra-week spend, those like fill-in trips that we talk about, you know, I think that the consumer may be doing less of that just given their general caution and uncertainty over what tariffs are going to do to their spending ability in the future.
Hey, Mari, when you speak to the retailers that you talk to across your coverage area, what's the feeling today in terms of how much they want to pass through to customers versus how much they're willing to kind of take in their margin here?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's so interesting seeing like the the commentary from the retailers versus what we see in the stock market is very different, right? I mean, the stock market is acting as if these tariffs are no big deal. We got some resolution, things are going to be fine. Then you listen to the retailers. I mean, you listen to Walmart today. They're talking about, you know, starting now, there will be less product on shelves. They're going to do all they can to try to protect pricing and their value position in faster turn categories like food, but there's certain categories like toys, electronics, even some of the textile categories like apparel and soft home, where it's going to be really hard for them to absorb the full impact of tariffs. So I think, you know, the 10% rate for a lot of companies is a lot more manageable. When you talk to them about the 10% we see globally ex-China, they seem to feel a little bit better about that. I think, you know, the 30% in China is still too high. And the margin levels in a lot of the categories that come out of China are very low, and they just do not have the ability to absorb that pricing themselves, share it with their vendors or their vendor partners, their manufacturing partners who are also operating on very low margin. And so it's inevitable that some of that is going to have to come through to higher prices. It's just a question of, you know, I think what the retailers are really they're really struggling with now, how to think about that trade-off between price and volume. You know, I mean, during the pandemic, as everyone took pricing, we did not see the kind of elasticity of demand that you would typically expect to see when prices move up. And I think how the retailers manage their unit inventories is going to be a huge area of focus for them and for investors during this really volatile period.
One thing that also caught my eye with Walmart is it said its online business posted a quarterly profit for the first time. Are you seeing the same trend across the board, and what does that tell you?
No, this is very Walmart specific. We have seen in the e-commerce space, Amazon and Walmart taking incredible share. And so when you listen to Walmart, and they've been kind of alluding to the fact that they were nearing this inflection in profitability for some time, I think it's really coming from two things. It's coming from the scale that they are now seeing as that business has grown so much. And also they've talked about how consumers are increasingly willing to pay for delivery, for expedited shipments. So if you're making dinner tonight and you realize you forgot a certain spice you could pay $5 to have Walmart deliver it to you in the next hour. And in those cases, the consumer is more willing to pay for delivery. And I think that's something Walmart had not expected. But it is a key, I think, part of the reason why they are able to achieve e-commerce profitability. They also have, of course, the benefit of the growth in the marketplace and advertising and fulfillment services and membership, all of which are higher margin and are really starting to move the needle for them, as we see with Amazon. But I think Walmart and Amazon are in a league of their own as it relates to what they're seeing in e-commerce, both in terms of the growth that they're putting up in that business and the profitability that they're able to achieve.
Mari, thank you so much for joining us. As always, Mari Shore, Senior Equity Analyst for Columbia Threadneedle Investments. She's up there in Boston, and she joined us via that Zoom thing. What I learned from our next guest years ago, it shocked me, and still to this day amazes me, the largest supermarket chain in the United States is Walmart. I never would have guessed that. And now that I think about it, of course it is. Jen Bartasha, she's the one that kind of enlightened me on that one. She's Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst. She covers the retail staples and the packaged goods companies. So, Jen, I'm thinking in a world of tariffs, and I'm worried about if I'm a retail investor, kind of the margins my retailers, like a Walmart, might have. Having the grocery store business as a traffic driver, that's got to be a good thing. Did we see that in Walmart's numbers today?
Yeah, hi, Paul. We absolutely saw that in Walmart's numbers. Their growth in consumables and grocery, mid-single digit growth. That means people keep coming back to Walmart to buy their staples. And that's a foundational type of thing, because for Walmart, as they get these customers doing that regular repeat shopping and coming in consistently, it really bodes well for how well they'll be able to retain those customers once all of this market volatility fades, and people become a little less price sensitive.
How does Walmart just really in general raise the pressure for competitors? We have Home Depot and Target reporting out soon. How do you think they will fare?
Well, I think that Walmart is really uniquely positioned because it arguably has the best view into mainstream America consumer of any retailer out there, because they touch such a huge number of households. And so when somebody the size of Walmart says that even their scale isn't big enough to fully offset tariffs, the read-through on that is for other retailers who are smaller and who have bigger exposure to imported goods is rather dire, because Walmart is the one that is probably best positioned to weather it because of its scale. But that just means for the smaller guys, it's going to be a really difficult battle, and that there's going to be a lot more price that has to be taken and a lot more operational maneuvering to try to stay competitive in that particular set. So Target has a lot of discretionary exposure. Home Depot, Lowe's, they both do as well. So it could be a difficult season for those retailers.
All right, full disclosure, and John Tucker knows this. My last job in this illustrious career of mine will be as a greeter at Walmart.
We hope to see you
That
there.
would be fun. I'll visit Walmart.
I've never been in one because they don't have them here, babe. It's weird.
Route 70 in Brick. That's going to be
That's too far.
The next stop here on this one. Hey, Jen, you mentioned it, and that's kind of where I wanted to go. I can see Walmart dealing with higher tariffs and pricing because they're Walmart. But how about the mom and pop retailers out there on Main Street USA? How tough is it going to be for them, do you think?
It's incredibly tough, Paul, because the mom and pop retailers, it's usually only a handful of employees. It's a very set type of inventory that they carry. They don't necessarily have the ability to flex in and out of different product categories to lessen the impact of tariffs, because they're usually known for a particular type of product, which is why their customers come to them. And so they're very reliant also on getting goods either directly or through third parties that are imported. And so there's just very little room in their operations to be able to offset the power of what's coming, or the pricing that's going to come with these tariffs. And we've heard anecdotally small businesses that are just saying they've had to lay off employees already. there could be greater ramifications, in terms of unemployment and things if small businesses are impacted to a large degree, should this tariff situation persist for longer than we're expecting.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because they have CFO John David Rainey saying the range of outcomes is pretty quote extreme, and it is. How has Walmart, have they hinted on how they're preparing for it? I mean, we know that they're a good barometer of the U.S. economy and they're really, really huge, but they must still be impacted by tariffs.
Absolutely, they definitely will be impacted. But part of where their advantage is that the company has been investing for some time behind technology like AI. And AI has across retail, but especially for those retailers who've had the time and the balance sheet to invest in it, gives them a lot of flexibility in their tools for predicting what their need is going to be and for responding quickly to changes in their supply chain. So, that investment in AI will actually pay some dividends and probably help them navigate the tariff situation more easily. And again, that goes back to the smaller players who don't have that kind of technology support or haven't been able to make those investments. It'll be harder for them to maneuver in that environment.
So, Jen, on Kroger or some big, grocery store, and I don't know, Kraft Food comes in and says Cheese Whiz is going to be 10 or 15% higher price to you, Kroger, because of tariffs. How does that conversation go? Who's got the leverage there? Who eats it? Who takes it? How does that go?
Yeah, it's usually a combination of a couple of things. So the first thing is that because the grocers all have private label programs, they are very, very well informed on what cost of ingredients are, which ingredients are being imported, packaging costs. So when a counterpart from a packaged food company comes to them and says, we need to increase prices because of X, Y, and Z, the retailer can call them out if they don't see the same pattern that they're being given as an excuse. Now, then there's a collaboration where ultimately both the retailer and the packaged food company want to, increase the volume sold and make sure that their products are getting in the hands of customers. So when it comes to pricing, usually there can be a bit of a sharing in terms of cost, but most of it does fall under the packaged food company itself. And that comes in the form of having to do promotions, or offering discounts and things like that to make sure that their products are actually moving and that they're generating turnover and that they're then getting some profit out of it.
Jen, thanks so much for joining us. Always appreciate it. Always learn something. Speaking to you, Jen Brighteon, Senior Retail Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. I mean, Jen had a real career at Bloomberg. She was managing departments, managing a bunch of people, global data. And then we asked her, 15 years ago, hey, come to Bloomberg Intelligence. We think you'd be a really good analyst. And she did come over, she accepted, and she's been great. And now she's one of the leading voices on retail. So another success story coming out of Bloomberg Intelligence. eToro.
That's amazing.
That's a cool platform here. Went public yesterday. Stock had a great IPO, right?
It did have a great IPO. I actually went out 5 years ago. I was already talking to Yanni, and it was amazing because it grew so much in the past 5 years. And look, now
yeah, so eToro, ETOR, went public yesterday, surged about 29%. They upsized the deal. There are more shares, higher price, stock trading higher. It's up about 3% today, giving back, but just a real solid IPO, a solid growth story. And it's something that a lot of market investors are looking and say, hey, we get a little bit of a rebound in this market. Let's see some IPOs come to the market because a lot of them were pushed off during some of the volatility of early April. And now some of those IPOs are coming back. Coming up right now, we're going to check in Yanni Asia, the eToro CEO, speaking in just moments with Bloomberg Television anchors Ed Ludlow and Caroline. I talked about the business, the IPO, the future of financial services. Again, eToro, a really unique financial platform for global financial services. Yanni Asia, eToro CEO with Bloomberg Television. Let's listen.
We want to welcome our worldwide TV and radio audiences. We look at shares of an investment platform, eToro, stabilizing a little bit after a pretty hyperbolic debut in public markets. Yesterday, the competitors of Robinhood began publicly trading at $52 a share. The upsize IPO raised nearly $620 million for companies and investors. We're joined now by eToro's CEO, Yanni Asia. Yoni, for both Caroline and I, it's a little bit of a sort of full circle story because I'd say over the last decade or more, eToro is a company we probably most consistently talked about. Finally, you've gone public. Actually, when shares started trading, it was well above $52. How does that feel for you?
It's an amazing feeling. You know, the last 2 weeks on the road show, being inside capital markets here in the U.S., now listing on NASDAQ, a super exciting journey, 18 years in the making of building eToro, the world's largest social investment network, and now our customers can trade eToro on eToro.
Educate the audience that doesn't necessarily know about eToro. What is the proportion of stock activity on the platform versus, say...
We're going to go to the Federal Reserve Chairman talking here.
Expansions on record, anchored expectations played a key role in facilitating these expansions. More recently, without that anchor, it would not have been possible to achieve a roughly 5 percentage point disinflation without a spike in unemployment. Keeping longer-run inflation expectations anchored was a driving force behind establishing the 2% target in the 2012 framework. Maintaining that anchor was a major consideration behind the changes in 2020, and anchored expectations are critical to everything we do, and we remain fully committed to the 2% target today. In the current review, the committee is engaged in discussions about what we have learned from the experience of the past 5 years. We plan to complete consideration of specific changes to the consensus statement in coming months. We're paying particular attention to the 2020 changes as we consider discrete but important updates, reflecting what we have learned about the economy and the way those changes were interpreted by the public. In our discussions so far, participants have indicated that they thought it would be appropriate to reconsider the language around shortfalls. And at our meeting last week, we had a similar take on average inflation target. We will ensure that our new consensus statement is robust to a wide range of economic environments and developments. In addition to revising the consensus statement, we will also consider potential enhancements to our formal policy communications, particularly regarding the role of forecasts and uncertainty. As we have been reviewing assessments of the 2020 framework and of policy decisions in recent years, a common observation is the need for clear communications as complex events unfold. While academics and market participants generally have viewed the FOMC communications as effective, there is always room for improvement. Indeed, clear communication is an issue even in relatively placid times.
It's not the clear communication that's the issue with Powell. The thing is that his team read the data wrong during the Biden administration and thought that inflation was transitory and didn't do shock therapy when they realized that they screwed up. And that's the reason why we have inflation today. Not because of the tariffs. The inflation that you had for the last 3 years is because this motherfucker read the data wrong.
Deepen our thinking about these issues, and they're critical to the success of these reviews. Thank you very much.
All right, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell there a little bit earlier this morning, speaking at a conference, and you did hear him mentioning here tariffs, impact on inflation, all of that, again, airing a bit earlier this morning, but we did want to share it with you here on Live Napa Fox. And as we go away for another break, I did just want to give you this live look at the stock market. It's going up now, different than when we showed you just about 30 or so minutes ago. We'll be right back.
All right. So what we have here on the S&P 500 is 5,895. VIX is trading at 1842. Euro USD is trading at 1.11. Oil is trading at $61.42 a barrel. BITO is trading at 21.58. It's above that support level of 21.48. USD Japanese yen is trading at 145.8. I'd like to see it trading in the 146, 147 range. That would be nice. We have natural gas trading at 3.4, so it's off of its session low of 3.38. And Gush is trading at
34, and DRIP is trading at 10.25.
Oracle, attention growing businesses. Oracle offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. This is for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. And the major stock averages that you mentioned turning mixed right now. The Dow pushing higher, up 70 points. That's about 0.2%. Leading the way, their shares of Cisco, Verizon, and Amgen. Cisco Systems benefiting from demand for systems that use AI technology. The company issuing a pretty solid forecast for revenue in the current quarter. Cisco also helping push the SP 500 higher. That's up, well, just 3 points, but it is higher. Along with shares of Steris PLC. This is the provider of infection prevention products. They reported their life sciences revenue for the fourth quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. And we check the markets for you all day long right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker, and that's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Isabel and Paul.
All right, John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Isabel Lee sitting in for Alex Steele. I'm Paul Sweeney. We're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. And it's raining. Good news. We're also streaming live on YouTube as well.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work by getting the great products that I offer. This is a dual-purpose product for males and females. It's a deodorant that will detoxify your body, and you use it as a deodorant every day. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. Get a couple bars for your household. Very high quality, made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Has no aluminum, no baking soda, all natural, and it's a dual-purpose product. You use it as a deodorant, and it will help to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, get the deodorants. It's for males and females, helps to detoxify your body. It's all natural. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Now let me talk about a stack before we go back to Bloomberg here. This is going to help with your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. Turmeric will neutralize free radicals. It also brings down inflammation. Very important for your immune system. And when you bring down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. Also, if you have arthritis, take turmeric. It's going to help reduce that inflammatory response. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Ashwagandha root brings down cortisol levels and helps you to control your blood glucose levels. That's really important for your vascular system. By bringing down inflammation, you're reducing the chances of plaque, and by controlling inflammation and bringing down your cortisol levels, you're boosting up your immune system. Stack these together, it's very powerful in terms of your vascular system and your immune system. But stack it also with olive leaf extract. It's a dual purpose. It's going to bring down inflammation, so it's going to help with your vascular system and your immune system. And olive leaf extract helps to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So you're reducing plaque formation. Extremely important for your vascular health. Stack these together to supercharge it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root, the turmeric, and the olive leaf extract. Click the link in the description to get to my website. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order.
Some other news right now. Just a little bit earlier today, this actually just wrapped up moments ago, we heard a live news conference following European Union Military Committee's meeting in Brussels as they were discussing European preparedness strategies as well as EU military support to Ukraine. Let's head over there and listen in.
Become even more successful. This brings us to the broader question, where is Europe headed to? The white paper for European Defence Readiness 2030 lays out several scenarios for the Union's evolution.
We don't need to hear that. We don't need to hear this because we know where Europe is going. It's going straight to hell. Let's go to Bloomberg.
They'll be pushing a lot more on the R&D front over here, hiring more local workers to offset some of that, which means at least over the next few years, there could be some downward pressure on the gross margins, in order to, showcase that they are investing heavily in the U.S.
How has it been like as an analyst covering all the tariff flip-flops and all these big tech companies that are at the mercy of some of Trump's pronouncements that are sometimes really unexpected?
I mean, listen, it is very tough, and frankly, we're going to see how and if this leads to some kind of demand destruction on any of the end markets we cover. So far, it doesn't look like it's having an impact on the cell phone market. It doesn't look like it's having an impact on the cloud market. But when you look at something like consulting market, I mean, it is having a second degree impact because people or companies are not sure how they're going to be, what kind of economic environment they will see down the road, whether there'll be a recession or not. So there has been an absolute stop in a lot of the consulting work and the consulting related, bookings or contracts out there. And I think that's kind of what we are seeing, at least in the overall tech space right now.
Anurag, thanks so much for joining us. Always appreciate getting a couple of minutes of your time. Anurag Rana, he's a senior technology analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. He and Mandeep Singh kind of lead our global technology research. It is a global technology research team. We've got analysts on the ground, North America, Europe, and most importantly, Asia, given where that is in the supply chain there. So Anurag and Mandeep manage that business for us. What are you looking at?
I'm just really I'm surprised because imagine Apple, you're a big company, $1 trillion market cap, and the president said ship out of China. So you do that and you go to India. And now they're saying, why are you in India? And I just don't want to be Tim Cook right now.
Yeah, it can be a tough situation that all companies are dealing with and trying to adapt. And one thing Tom Keene always says is companies adapt, whether it's a global pandemic or whether it's trade tensions, companies adapt, consumers adapt. And that's arguably what the tech industry and global trade will do as well. Looking at the markets here, got the S&P up 4 points, no real movement there. The Dow's up 85 points. NASDAQ is off 58 points. So at the index level, not a lot of movement here today. The VIX is quiescent, as Tom Keene would say, below 19. 10-year Treasury yields coming in noticeably, about 7-8 basis points. We're now at 4.45% on the 10-year Treasury. Bitcoin, I'll call that out for Tom on the Upper East Side. It's off almost 1%, just under 103,000 on your cryptocurrency. Gold higher, $3,200. How about that? This is
BITO is now trading up, and it's trading at 21,675. Again, the support level is 2148. All right, let's take a look at. I'm kind of surprised we really don't have any audio with Trump's trip yet in UAE, unfortunately. All right, let's take a look. Let's see here. FEMA is not ready for hurricane season. Scary. Let's go to Times Radio here. They're talking about Putin paranoid about his own safety.
that's where we brought in HP.
To the surprise of literally no one, Vladimir Putin will not show up for peace talks with Ukraine in Turkey. President Zelensky has accused Russia of sending stand-in props in his place. What else is on the Russian leader's mind? A think tank, the International Institute for Strategic Studies, warns Putin could rebuild his military and invade a NATO country within just 2 years, if a ceasefire is agreed in Ukraine. This is also something that a Washington military analyst suggested to me on yesterday's show. Let's speak now to Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, the former commanding officer of NATO's Rapid Reaction Battalion. Colonel de Bretton-Gordon, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Great pleasure. I'm going to hazard a guess and predict that you were unsurprised by the news that Putin hasn't turned up in Istanbul.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been writing about it this week. I think that there are a whole host of reasons why it hasn't, probably front of which he's absolutely paranoid about his own safety and flying outside Russian airspace and going to somewhere where his very extensive security apparatus could not protect him. And many people in the world believe that the easiest and the most effective way to a ceasefire would be if Putin's not around. So no, not surprised at all. And the second piece to this is I don't think Putin has any interest in peace at the moment at all. He feels that he is still way short of the aims that he wanted to completely subjugate Ukraine and also to re-establish the boundaries of the old Soviet Union, which perhaps we'll come on to at the moment. And also the fact that, he's lost up to 1 million casualties. His economy is heading downwards and downwards even quicker now the oil price is falling. So that if he doesn't achieve at least his aim of subjugating Ukraine, I don't suppose his future as the leader of Russia will be very extensive.
That's very interesting because there is a suggestion that President Trump might finally be getting a little bit suspicious of Vladimir Putin. We wait to see that. But he's told reporters on Air Force One that nothing is going to happen until Putin and I get together. I mean, do you think they will get together at any point, and what would likely happen then?
Well, unfortunately, in this case, I think President Trump is probably right. He is the only world leader with the military heft and financial heft, as it were, to drag President Putin to some sort of negotiation table. The Russian leader knows actually that the American military might is so much greater than his own that that could really sort of end things. And he also knows that Trump has the ability to turn various financial and trade switches on and off, which will cripple his economy, which at the moment is on a war footing and enabling him to build tanks and ammunition. But if the oil price continues to fall that Putin is absolutely relying on, even he cannot make ammunition on thin air. So I think actually now we're seeing Trump probably does hold the cards, and let's hope that he can go and see or get Putin to see him, which seems the most likely way that we're going to get a ceasefire, certainly in the near future.
Well, quite. I'll get to one of the reasons. I think I'm right in saying that your view is that even if Putin knows he must avoid invoking Article 5 of the NATO treaty, which of course deems an attack on one member state to be an attack on all. But the International Institute for Strategic Studies doesn't seem to think so. They suggest that he might actually go that far.
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, the IISS, one of the top institutions in the world, and they've got a lot of very clever people looking at this. Their report, as detailed in the Times today, is very much sort of worst case, and also picks a number of assumptions that then leads them to this particular position. When it comes to Article 5, I think that it would be a failed assumption for Putin to take that particular line. I also question whether Putin could rebuild a force that would, in this hypothesis, attack into the Baltic states. He might, the report also says that he is churning out a lot of tanks. What the key failing of the Russian army at the moment is it's unable to train. And in order to train to be effective in what we call combined arms warfare, that's with tanks, drones, aircraft, artillery all working together, you need to do a lot of training. when I trained my regiment, it took about 2 years to get to that sort of stage. So, on training alone, I doubt that the Russians, and this is at the basis that, as you said earlier, that we have a ceasefire now, and they're completely, unfettered, unaffected by anybody in developing this. We've only seen last week the alleged Russian build-up along the Finnish border, but actually, if you look into it a little bit more detail, certainly, the Russians are building a few bases up opposing the Finnish border, but actually they've got no equipment to put in it, no manpower to put in it. And if they look west at the Finns, there's over 1 million men and women that are trained and ready to defend them. So I think the IISS report is very important. It's very key and it's timely, but the assumptions used are absolutely the worst case. And it presupposes that we in the West do absolutely nothing. It also suggests that we in the West need to spend more money on our defence, and absolutely that is exactly what's happening. Even this country that has been very miserly in spending on defence.
It's hard to put into words the horrors that we've witnessed every day during our time here. Entire families come into the emergency department injured.
Very miserly in spending on defence is increasing to 2.5 and then 2.7%. So again, where Putin, when he looks west now, hopefully is seeing a much more determined defence than he did when he looked west 3 years ago.
Well, it's nice to end on an optimistic note. Thanks very much for your time. That's Colonel Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, former British Army officer, with his views on what's happening with those, non-ceasefire talks at the moment, I suppose they are, between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul.
The level of the threat has increased. We've seen this throughout those 3 years since Russia launched its war of aggression against Ukraine. And we see the threat rising beyond Ukraine. And I want to highlight the importance of what happened in Estonia, where for the first time, Russia responded to economic sanctions by members of the alliance with military action. This is a testament to the level of the threat that we're facing on the eastern flank of NATO. If Russia is tampering with the Estonian Navy 3 days ago, this is precisely because our sanctions are biting. They're biting Russia, because as you remember, what happened in Estonia is that the sanctioned oil tanker was being stopped by the Estonian Navy, and Russian jet fighters came across to basically threaten the Estonian Navy not to stop a sanctioned oil tanker, an oil tanker used by Russia to circumvent those sanctions that we applied on Russian energy. So these sanctions, they are already very strongly affecting the Russian economy. We estimate that our sanctions cost Russia 400 billion euros, which is worth 3 years of military spending by Russia. But we want to go. But he's facing an empty chair, the chair of Vladimir Putin, who actually suggested direct discussions between Ukraine and Russia, but who is not present here in Turkey today, despite of the fact that President Trump expressed his willingness, availability to facilitate those discussions. Of course, Vladimir Putin sent a low-level delegations in Turkey today because he wants to avoid the massive sanctions that the US, Europeans are preparing to force him to enter into peace negotiations. But of course, we need to go further. This is the reason why I will be meeting with Senator Lindsey Graham in a few minutes to discuss his sanction package that has been mentioned by Marco Rubio earlier, and that we want to build upon to add European deterrence sanctions to this US package with one single objective, which is to get Vladimir Putin to cease fire and to enter peace negotiations. What will these deterrence sanction package recover? Well, they will include sanctions on oil and sanctions on financial institutions, because this is what is today fueling Russian war of aggression against Ukraine.
All right.
There's DIY.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and follow this advice that I have about proper sleep. It's really important. There are too many people in the United States that have chronic sleep deprivation. That's very bad for you, all right? Speeds up your aging process, and you are increasing your chances of early onset of dementia. Now, if you take Goodnight Formula, you're gonna get into 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. That's very important for you to be able to detoxify your central nervous system, to be well rested when you wake up in the morning, and consolidate memory. If you are sleep deprived, you're not consolidating memory. Your memory is declining. So it's very important to take Goodnight Formula. When you are sleep deprived, you also have elevated cortisol levels, which does damage to tissues and suppresses your immune system. So it's really important to get good sleep, to slow down the aging process, to boost up that immune system, to detoxify your central nervous system, to consolidate your memory, and to be well rested. So take the Goodnight Formula. It has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower to be able to get you into those 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep that will help to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate memory, and to be well rested. Very important to take. Take it every night. Now, let's talk about structural nanosilver toothpaste. The structural nanosilver toothpaste is the best toothpaste that you can buy. You can't buy anything better than this. Bar none, this is the best toothpaste. So go to my store, get a few tubes of this toothpaste. It's made from structural nanosilver. It'll whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, help to improve the health of your gums, neutralize the bacteria that causes plaque, and with good oral hygiene, you're reducing the chances of valvular disease and vascular disease. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this toothpaste. It's the toothpaste that I've been using for years. And guess what? Again, use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Now, I have structural nanosilver gels. I have 2 types, in the quick dispenser and in the tube form. Use them the same way for dual purpose. You can use it as an aftershave. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on a wound and it'll heal the wound quicker. And if you're sick or someone around you is sick, put it around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears, around your mouth. Lightly coat your nostrils, put it on your hands, stays active for 5.5 hours. Way better than Perel. Perel doesn't stay active more than 20 seconds. And Perel actually cracks your skin and hurts the top layer of your skin. This heals your skin. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you have some structural nanosilver gel at home, at work. You never know when you need it. Go to my store, get the structural nanosilver gel, and you can use it also as an aftershave. Now, we were talking about the health of your neurons, especially to make sure that you get enough sleep. But I also have 2 supplements that if you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking every day. And that is NAD Plus is a supplement that will boost up your energy levels, help to heal your DNA damage, because when you get older, you start to accumulate more DNA damage. So NAD Plus helps the repair mechanism to repair that DNA damage. That DNA damage is cellular DNA damage and mitochondrial DNA damage. So take this supplement, it's going to help to repair that DNA damage. NAD Plus also protects neurons. Really important once you turn age 40. So if you're 40 years old or older, you better start taking NAD Plus. So go to my store to mitigate the problems. And ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. Most people that take CoQ10, guess what? You're taking the wrong type. This is the best. You can't get anything better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this ubiquinol. It's the most bioavailable form of CoQ10. What does CoQ10 do? It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to reduce stress on your cells. It's going to help with the mitochondrial health. It's going to boost up your energy levels and protect your neurons. You stack them together, and it's a great neuroprotector. You stack this Goodnight Formula, NAD+, and ubiquinol, you're detoxifying your central nervous system. You're getting 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. You're getting higher energy levels. You're consolidating memory, and you're protecting your neurons. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get this stack. Lots of people are going to have neurological problems if they don't pay attention. So, and also do cardio. You want good blood flow going to your brain. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence with Paul Sweeney and Alex Steele on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, SLV sitting in for Alex Steele on Paul Sweeney, live here on Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming on YouTube as well. All right, you've heard me say before, one of my favorite companies out there is DEER. DE is a ticker symbol. They're great. The green tractors, it just screams middle America, American manufacturing. Another name is Boeing. To me, that just screams engineering excellence. If I were a portfolio manager, I'd be tempted to own these things all the time. But of course, DEER is cyclical. Boeing's got its issues. You got to be smart here. But DEER hitting an all-time high today, $523, which begs the question, why don't they split the stock? But it's up 5% here today, some good numbers. We've got a really good analyst who covers DEER and all this parts of the U.S. economy, these big equipment manufacturers. Chris Ciolino, he's a senior U.S. machinery analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. I remember when he was an associate. He did well there, so we promoted him to analyst. He did well there, so now we promoted him to senior analyst, and he's just killing it. He learned from one of the best in Coward Hart. Hey, Chris, talk to us about DEER here, because I look at DEER, it's a call on the U.S. farmer. Talk to us about what you learned from DEER with their quarterly earnings here.
Yeah, you're too kind, Paul, but really it was a solid print, better than expected margins across the board, margin performance in their production precision ag business, which is really their biggest earnings driver, was particularly strong despite a pretty significant top line decline. So really solid execution in a tough market. Yes, they did cut the outlook, but that was expected just given the uncertainty around tariffs and trade. The new guide implies something in the neighborhood of $19 a share in 2025, which is slightly above the street. So not as bad as maybe some had feared. And really, I think the big takeaway from these results are that it really kind of further solidifies that earnings will bottom this year, and that I think we're looking towards a cyclical recovery in 26 and beyond.
What was a differentiating factor for DEER? Because we have rival tractor makers like CNH reporting lower first quarter sales.
You know, I think one of the biggest takeaways from the ag equipment OEMs and really broadly within machinery this quarter was that I think the tariff situation and the impact is much more manageable than many had anticipated. The second quarter performance with CNH and with AGCO and even with DEER here was better than expected. I think we were expecting something a little more draconian. It's very manageable from a cost perspective. I think the bigger concern and where we still have some trepidation is on the demand side of the equation. If in fact, we see a potential re-escalation or a lack of a de-escalation on the tariff front, particularly around China, what that would do to U.S. crop exports and the demand impact on 26 and really beyond. So it was really a solid quarter for all OEMs, and I think we're looking towards what the trajectory of the recovery will ultimately be.
DEER, located in Moline, Illinois, literally the middle of America. So that is cool as well. Chris, nobody's got a better view of the
U.S. farmer than Deere. What are they saying about the U.S. farmer today? It is, again, in a world of kind of uncertain tariff environment.
Yeah, we heard from Deere on the call, finally starting to allude to some sense of stabilization in terms of the farm economy. Crop prices continue to remain under pressure, but, relatively steady sequentially here. The government did issue some handouts, and they, acknowledged roughly, I think, 75% of the $10 billion have been distributed. So I think that's provided them with a little bit of liquidity. We're still, farm fundamentals are pressured and likely will be for the balance of this year. But again, I think we're probably approaching a trough, not only from a farm economy perspective, but also from an earnings perspective for Deere and the rest of the OEMs.
And with tractor sales trending lower since 2023, are we expecting an uptick soon, or is this going to plateau? What are you expecting?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big debate right now as to what the shape of the recovery looks like. From a volume perspective, we're going to be down roughly 30% in terms of large, high horsepower tractors this year. It'll be the second year of double-digit declines. We're probably going to be, near the lowest level in really 2 decades in terms of volume. So I think there's probably limited downside risk from that perspective as we move forward. It's just like, what does that trajectory look like in 26? Right now, our expectation is that we're going to see a much more muted recovery than what we typically see in a normal cyclical upturn. Historically, we see, anywhere in the 10 to 15% increase in volume in year one of a recovery. We're thinking it's kind of more in that low mid-single digit range until we get better visibility on the trade situation.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Chris Ciolino, Senior U.S. Machinery Analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence, along with Lindsay Dutch. Another one of the folks that Bloomberg Intelligence developed, took them right in, trained them up, gave them the resources to succeed, and there they go. So we got some great senior research talent, homegrown at Bloomberg Intelligence. Chris is one of those guys covering the machinery companies for us here. And God, if you're Deere, the stock's at an all-time high. And it kind of goes back, and I see a stock with a $500 handle. I'm like, split the stock price. Yeah. Take 10-for-1 split. I mean,
psychologically.
But it's less relevant today because you can buy fractional shares.
That's true.
And which you couldn't do back in the day. So I mean, that kind of reduces the need for that. So, but anyway, great quarter for Deere in terms of maybe setting the bottom for that notoriously cyclical business of farm equipment. All right, folks, for our listeners in the U.S., a reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM channel 121 is presented by ShipStation. Stay with us. Your top stories in global business headline.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Get the dual purpose collagen. This will help with your skin, your hair, your nails, your musculature, your joints, the cartilage, and your bones. Now, the amino acid profile is shown up on the screen here, the typical amino acid profile for the powder. You can also see the label on my website. Take the collagen every day. There's a big scooper that you get in this container. This is a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, a smoothie. Some people put it in coffee. And take it every day. Do resistance training. All right, and you're going to see benefits with your skin, your nails, your hair, your joints, your musculature, your bones. Take it every day. It's really important, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this very high-quality collagen. Now, I also have a great stack here that will help with your vascular health and your bone health. And you can stack it with the collagen too. Now, let's talk about the cardiovascular health first. Vitamin K2, MK7, and D3 taken together will help with pulling out calcium around plaque. Right? You get calcium depositing around plaque formation. So this will help to pull it out and reduce further plaque buildup, all right? In addition, taking nattokinase will help to break up clots and to bring down LDL, help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So when you improve your lipid profile, you're reducing plaque formation. So that's really important. Plus, when you have blockage, what will happen is there's turbulent flow that takes place within the flow of blood through that blockage, and clots could form. This will help to break up those clots. So take the nattokinase, the D3, and the K2 together. It's a great stack for cardiovascular health. Now, D3 works better when you take magnesium in your diet and in your supplementation. And again, you can get magnesium from my store through the vitamin C, magnesium and zinc, or the Boomer Boost powder. Now, D3 and K2, when you do resistance training, you're going to actually, over time, build denser bones. So taking calcium, I drink milk to take in my calcium. Take the D3, take the K2, do the resistance training, and also do this exercise that will help to improve that bone matrix. And that is to put your feet together, bare feet on a hard floor, and do calf lifts, all right? And you're just lifting up, and then on the heel, you come down, but not too hard, and you do that 50 times each day. And you're sending a vibration up through your legs, into your hip, and up through your vertebrae. And by doing that, it's sending a micro signal to actually deposit more bone to stiffen it. All right. So doing resistance training, weightlifting, and this vibrational exercise is really important. All right. That's the little trick. So get the K2, get the D3, get the nattokinase. It's dual purpose. It's going to help with your cardiovascular health. You do resistance training and you're helping with your bone density. And again, you'll supercharge it with your bone density by taking the collagen too. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
The top baby names remain the same, but some old favorites are climbing the charts.
BabyNames.com says classic old-fashioned names are all the rage again. For girls, think Eleanor, Eloise, Elegy, Alma, Margaret, Nora, and Bennett. For boys, Theodore, Oliver, Owen, Silas, and Jasper. One consultant says they offer just the right mix of vintage soul and modern edge. Another suggests parents look for inspiration by visiting nursing homes and graveyards. Despite the trend, Liam and Olivia still top.
I want to listen to live now. Maybe something's going on with this Trump.
Emirates. Let's speak to Hashim Al-Bari, who joins us now on set. Hashim, so we are looking at those live pictures of Donald Trump just before he starts his state dinner. He's in the UAE, the final stop of his tour. Across this tour, he's talked about the trillions of dollars that he has secured from the Gulf states to take back home. But this goes both ways, doesn't it? This is a give and take relationship. Tell us a little about what the Gulf states are getting out of this.
So first of all, he has been saying that he has inherited a bad legacy from his predecessor, Joe Biden, and that he's using his own personal relations to build strong ties with the royal families in this part of the world for the sake of bigger trade deals that will be beneficial to the American people and to the American economy. And he's been saying that in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and then the United Arab Emirates, he was hoping to get deals worth of trillions of US dollars. In the UAE, for example, they have been talking about the potential for an investment of $1 trillion over the next 10 years in artificial intelligence. It means a lot for him. It fits into his own narrative to his own people that he is successful, he's transactional, and he's changing the way to do business across the globe. At the same time, he's hoping to further expand. Coming years, very crucial for him, but at the same time very crucial for the GCC leaders. This is a moment where they would like to further cement their alliance with the United States of America, hoping that this is going to transcend later into a broad security arrangement to provide them with more stability and protection for as long as it takes.
Hashim, so one of the things he's hoping to get from the United Arab Emirates in particular is this focus on technology. That is what the Emirates are hoping to get from Donald Trump. Tell us a bit about that and why the AI revolution is part of the UAE's national vision going forward, and what Donald Trump can bring to them for that.
The UAE is an incredibly wealthy nation, which has used the windfall from the export of oil to diversify its economy. So they're pretty much investing through the sovereign fund in different projects globally, infrastructure, tourism, and now they're moving towards artificial intelligence. And this is where they said that they are going to invest $1 trillion in artificial intelligence, and they want to become a leader. You can see him now being greeted by dignitaries and members of the royal family in the United Arab Emirates, which is going to be followed by that talk and then by the agreement. So the UAE wants, in exchange for the $1 trillion to be invested in the US in artificial intelligence, for the Americans to provide them with advanced technology, particularly when it comes to the microchips, so that by the end of the day, this is what they're hoping to do. It's exactly a replay what we saw in Saudi Arabia. They want to end up having their own hubs in the United Arab Emirates and positioning the Emirates as a leader in artificial intelligence and exporting that technology later throughout the entire region.
They have the money for it, but they don't have the expertise. Is that right? That's why they need the United States.
But, it's so advanced technology that the Chinese have been desperate to have it. And one of the reasons why the Americans in the past were very reluctant to provide the Emirates with the microchips, the fears that they might end up in the hands of the Chinese. But against the backdrop of this massive investment, which is going to be announced by the Emirates, the Americans decided now to provide them with hundreds of thousands of microchips every year, which is going to be a crucial component for the Emirates to set up those companies at home and then move on. But it's not just about artificial intelligence. They will later have to decide. The UAE has used its leverage by building strong ties with different non-state actors in Libya, Tunisia, in Sudan, and in different parts of sub-Saharan Africa. And they will be instrumental for the Americans when they decide that it was about time to solve some of the ongoing problems. So I think it's politics and at the same time trade agreements and defense agreements.
Hashim, we're just watching Donald Trump look around. I think it's worth talking about what he's looking around at. So he is in the Grand Presidential Palace, isn't he? In the Corniche, the Casa Al Watan. I may have pronounced that completely wrong.
An impressive palace.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
I've spent 6 years. I've lived there for 6 years, and each time, by the way, during this visit to the Middle East, each time he goes into a place or a palace, first reaction, I'm impressed with the building. I'm impressed with the architecture. And this explains why he said that he praised the leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar, and Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the President of the UAE, for the impressive infrastructure development in these three countries. And he said that it's quite an indication that their model is a model that could be replicated, so that the Middle East ends up being a region defined by commerce, by stability and prosperity, and no longer by chaos. And I think I wouldn't be surprised in the statement that we'll hear from him later, saying praise that he has been heaping on the Saudis and the Qataris when it comes to the developments in their own countries. And
this is something we've talked about throughout the course of the last few days, that he loves the pomp and ceremony that has come with this trip. This palace, I believe, has a room, tell me if I'm wrong, Hashem, that is dedicated just for displaying presidential gifts that have been given to the UAE by countries from all across the globe.
Indeed, massive palace, impressive. One of the many projects that were built over the last few years in the United Arab Emirates. And you know, Trump likes opulence, he likes everything which is in the superlative, and he's been very impressed with the projects that he saw in this part of the world. And you know, one of the reasons why he really likes to talk about it is because he wants to tell people at home, you trust me, I will do exactly like these people, and I'll change everything. My airports will look different, the infrastructure will look different. This is someone who has been complaining about everything in the United States of America, saying that the bureaucracy and the system should change, and he was impressed with what he saw in this part of the world. It's quite an interesting moment, and this last leg of his stop of his trip to the Middle East is also very important for a variety of reasons. He is definitely one of those key players regionally with huge wealth, which Trump is trying to tap into for a different set of reasons.
Well, Hashem, if we could talk a bit, we started talking about artificial intelligence. We know that the UAE has dedicated, I believe, about $100 billion already, a fund specifically looking into artificial development. What is it hoping to get from the United States on that front?
So if you look at the sovereign funds in this part of the world, the Saudis, the UAE has one of the most important, which is chaired by the brother of the president, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, who is also the national security advisor. And they've been going to different countries and global players with that sovereign fund, saying that we would like to step in and provide help or team up with you when it comes to projects. And they have invested heavily in renewable energy, infrastructure, tourism, but now they're putting more emphasis on technology, particularly advanced technology, and recently artificial intelligence. And by the way, when you say they want to invest $1 trillion in artificial intelligence, that's really exactly what top CEOs in the United States of America were looking forward, which is if they want to further expand the infrastructure, they will need cash to be injected, and that cash will necessarily come from the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And this is a win-win situation for all the parties. And this explains why the Emiratis know that leverage, the state's sovereign wealth fund, is going to be important for them to advance at the same time the interests of the United Arab Emirates, which I said is one of the key regional players because of its been building bridges with many countries, huge political influence coupled with the financial clout.
Hashem, I think this is a good point to remind our viewers where what we are watching on our screens. I believe that is a sort of wide shot of the Qasr Al Watan, the Grand Presidential Palace on the Corniche in Abu Dhabi, where Donald Trump is currently inside. He's been welcomed by the President, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. They are due to hold bilateral talks. This is, of course, the final port of call, if you like, for Donald Trump on his 3-day visit to Gulf states. I want to bring in Mohammed Al-Masri, Professor of Media Studies at the Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. Mohammed, so a flurry of diplomacy on this trip, not just mega deals. What sort of stood out for you on the diplomatic front?
Well, certainly I thought it was really interesting to hear what President Trump had to say regarding the Iranian file. The sense is that, we may be close to some kind of a deal, some kind of an arrangement. And it's difficult to see why not at this point, given what we heard over the past couple of days. If Trump is sort of true to his word, If the only red line is a nuclear weapon, and if the Iranians are already on board with that parameter, with that condition, then there's really no reason why.
All right, I'm going to shift over. I'm going to shift over to Bloomberg. It looks like Medicaid cuts advance out of committee.
Some burden being on states. Now, the baseline they laid out is 5% contributions from states, but then there's a penalty for states that have a history of not being totally accurate in terms of who's eligible for it. That could raise it up to 25% matching from states, and that would apply historically to about half the states in the country. So it's a significant shift towards the burden being on states for funding that.
Right. Of course, I'm now supposed to ask you if all of this is going to change when it goes to the Senate, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of it is. Jack, we'll let you get back to your coverage in the House of Representatives. Jack Fitzpatrick covering this process for us at Bloomberg Government, our Congress reporter. You can find him on the terminal, of course, and online, and as often as we can get him on this program. Jack knows what he's talking about. That is the latest that we have here. Remembering, budget tomorrow to assemble this thing before it goes, if they get it done, to a floor vote next week. If we get a SALT deal, the earth will shake a bit around here. We'll let you know as soon as it happens, and you know you'll have a red headline on the terminal. I'm Joe Matthew. We'll turn to geopolitics next as President Trump lands in Abu Dhabi. It's straight ahead on Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol. Myotrol is extremely important. Once you turn about age 40, you start having problems gaining muscle and maintaining muscle. It's called atrophy. To prevent that, take Myotrol. It's going to help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle and help with your mitochondria. Mitochondria builds up the energy levels that you need, it's called ATP, to be able to maintain and build muscle. Myotrol is made with flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans. Now, stack Myotrol with Gladiator barley, and it will help you to build muscle even quicker. It's really important to take if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll benefit from Myotrol because it's going to help reduce inflammation. It'll allow you to recover quicker from your workout and help you to build muscle. So make sure you take Myotrol. It's a very important supplement, especially for an anti-aging protocol. Clarity factor, really important. It gets rid of brain fog. Drink it with filtered water. What it's going to do is it's going to take away that brain fog. You're going to be able to concentrate on your tasks, either at work or in school, or even if you're retired. Now, by having better cognition and more conductivity with your neurons, you're going to improve the neuroplasticity, right? Those dendritic connections are going to improve over time, and you're going to be able to concentrate better, and you're going to support your memory, right? You're going to build more of these networks, and your memory will improve. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Clarity Factor. Take it every day to help with your neural health. Now, also, it's about a holistic approach to life. Proper diet. Make sure you stay away from processed foods. Stay away from high sugary foods. Drink filtered water. Do cardio to get good blood flow. Do the other modalities of exercise, like resistance training, because resistance training is activating certain types of neurons. Balancing and stretching activates other types of neurons. So the more ways that you activate different neurons, either for coordination or even just for cognition, for thinking about certain things and performing mental tasks. When you stimulate those neural networks, you're improving those neural networks because there's a plasticity to them. So you want to improve those networks. So when you get into your into your geriatric years, you'll have more vitality. So make sure you take Clarity Factor, take it every day, drink it with filtered water. But a great stack to help with your brain, Clarity Factor, and to help with your muscles, Myotrol. Now,
we're in the allergy season in the United States, but for the allergy season or the cold season, or even if you're living in an environment where you have poor air quality, the moment you have an irritation in your throat, you want to mitigate it. So take the structural nanosilver drops or lozenges to mitigate that problem. So I have the drops in 100 count per bag in 3 different flavors, in honey and lemon, in blueberry, and also in cherry. It's made from structural nanosilver, very high quality. I also have the lozenges in elderberry and zinc. All right, in a 21 count for each bag. Get a few bags for your household, lozenges and drops. Make sure you have some at work, some at home. The moment you have that irritation, mitigate it right away. Really important. Because when you mitigate it right away, you're creating these secretions and you're protecting your immune system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And when you're mitigating that irritant, all right, you're reducing the chances of further problems, because the moment that you start having additional problems like upper respiratory issues or even lower respiratory issues, it takes much longer for your body to heal. So if you mitigate it right away, you don't have to deal with that problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. When there was the fire in New Jersey, there was the air quality over New York City was pretty poor. So this happened a few weeks ago. I took the lozenges right away to mitigate that irritation, because the air quality was even getting into the building because of just the HVAC system. So take my advice, powerful stuff. Take it right away the moment you have an irritation during the cold season, allergy season, or even with poor air quality.
You can always listen to us live on the Bloomberg Professional app, CarPlay, and all the rest on your way to work and on demand as well. So he's still holding out the possibility of maybe going to Turkey. President Trump, now day 3. This is the final stop on the Middle East tour today. He's in Abu Dhabi and just arrived a short time ago, right around noontime Eastern here at the presidential palace, where he's enjoying another dinner. But could he make a turn for Turkey? You've heard what's going on there, right? This is not about peace in the Middle East. This is about peace in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky is in Turkey for peace talks. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is in Turkey. There was a thought that we would have maybe even direct talks between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin. That apparently is not going to be the case because Putin's still in Moscow. Unless, of course, he's working on something with Trump. Listen to President Trump before he left Qatar about 3 o'clock in the morning.
I was thinking about going, but it's very tough because of what we're doing today and tomorrow. But, if something happened, I'd go on Friday if it was appropriate. But we have people right now negotiating, and I think I just hope that Russia and Ukraine are able to do something, because it has to stop.
If it was appropriate. Interesting idea. You wonder if something might happen here in the next 24 hours, and that's why we wanted to spend some time with Jenny Welch, Bloomberg Economics chief geoeconomics analyst, with her eyes on President Trump's travels through the Middle East. Jenny, it's great to have you. I have a lot of questions, but I want to just start with this matter of the meetings involving Ukraine. Will there actually be a formal negotiation? Who would be sitting on the other side of the table from Volodymyr Zelensky, or is this about lower level talks that somehow keep the ball in play?
Still tremendous uncertainty at this point. We're literally watching minute by minute for updates on whether talks have started, at least at lower levels, between Ukrainian, Russian, and American officials that are currently in Turkey. I would put my odds, though, on a higher level meeting at the leader level being relatively slim at this stage. Of course, there's still the possibility, as Trump is indicating there, that he could go to Turkey. And I think if he does, that would really put a lot of pressure on President Putin to show up as well. But realistically, for these leader level meetings to take place, there's a lot of work that has to happen in advance to set up even just the security protocols for that to take place. And if at this stage they're still not sure whether something's going to happen, I think that points to a very high possibility that they're unlikely to have talks at that level, which for President Zelensky means that he's going to be leaving Turkey and allowing potentially lower level officials to continue conversations. But ultimately, a leader level conversation, I don't think it's in the books for this week.
Well, as Vladimir Putin strings us along here, Jenny, you have to wonder, why would he ever give the U.S. the win of successfully mediating peace in Ukraine?
I think both sides are really playing blame game shifting here. President Zelensky agreed very rapidly to President Putin's call for a leader level conversation. He wants to make it clear that he is not the barrier to peace at this point in time. I think President Putin offered the idea of direct leader level conversations as a way of bypassing the pressure on a ceasefire and saying, no, instead of agreeing to a ceasefire, what we really should do is have a conversation about the larger peace process here and the deeper roots of this conflict. So sort of trying to pivot or spin away as a way of avoiding the question on a ceasefire, which at this stage, Moscow isn't interested in. They have the battlefield advantage. They think that they have the ability to weather this storm, essentially, and that the U.S. will eventually sort of turn away from Ukraine and continue to reduce aid to Kyiv. And as a result, time is on their side. They just have to play a waiting game and kind of kicking the can down the road. That being said, Putin still doesn't want to look like he's the impediment, so he's trying to portray himself as being conducive and shifting the blame back to Ukraine. And I think that's essentially where we're at, is the game of blame shifting, where I think Ukraine now has the upper hand because Zelensky actually showed up in Turkey and was willing to talk and is really shifting the onus back onto Putin for not arriving.
Really interesting analysis as we spend time with Jenny Welch from Bloomberg Economics. I want to ask you a bit about Iran while I have you here for another minute. Jenny, the Trump administration has put forth what the president described yesterday as an olive branch. It's an actual proposal for a nuclear deal. This came from White House envoy Steve Witkoff, a written proposal to the Iranians, who are sending messages through some lower level officials in an interview with NBC News to suggest that they're ready to make a deal. Is this really happening?
I think to say, as President Trump did, that a deal is imminent might be overly optimistic at this stage. I think there's probably a lot of details that the two sides are still working out, including on the enrichment question of whether Iran will be able to retain a civilian nuclear energy program, as Tehran certainly wants to, but as U.S. officials have kind of given conflicting statements on in the past. Another major issue that they have to reckon with, and which was a problem in the original JCPOA nuclear deal, and a reason why President Trump essentially tore that deal up, is the question of Iran's regional activity that ties to groups like the Houthis, to Hamas, to Hezbollah, where Iran in the past has not been willing to make concessions there. President Trump has made quite clear that one reason he thought that prior deal wasn't sufficient is it didn't include terms on that front. All that being said, talks have been going more positively than I think a lot of folks expected, especially given President Trump's prior stance on JCPOA. So I don't think that's to say that a deal isn't possible at some point in the future, just that there's probably still a lot of details that are being worked out actively at the moment.
Seems like the answer to almost every question I can ask you right now, Jenny Welch. It's great to see you, Jenny. Thank you. Bloomberg Economics Chief Geo-Economics Analyst and the perfect voice for today. As we return to the question surrounding the tariffs, it's interesting. We haven't been focused too heavily since this purported deal with China was floated just days ago here. But the question, of course, was, is the point to reshore industry and use as a negotiating tool, or is it to raise revenue? Remembering the Commerce Secretary, beginning of April, envisioning what he described as the army of millions and millions of human beings, screwing in little screws, he said, to make iPhones. That kind of thing is going to come to America. That was walked back a little bit, but based on what we're hearing from Donald Trump with regard to Apple, it does kind of sound like the White House wants to see this happen. President Trump asking Apple's Tim Cook to stop building plants in India to make devices for the U.S., saying Apple will be, quote, upping their production in the United States, unquote, as a result of their discussion. I have always wanted to get Mark Gurman on this program because he's a news machine and he knows more than anyone else when it comes to Apple. Bloomberg News managing editor for Global Consumer Tech, with us from San Francisco. Mark, it's great to see you. Welcome to the political program that you've managed to avoid for all of these years. Now our lives intersect, and I wonder what you think about that vision. I wonder what Tim Cook thinks about that vision of an army of millions turning screws in iPhones in the US. Is this real?
No, I mean, maybe Tim Cook wants that. Maybe he likes that idea. I can't speak for him. Maybe he is completely aligned with Donald Trump on this being what both men want. But it's also, Tim Cook would be the first to tell you, not going to happen. There is no reality in which Apple can mass produce or do final assembly on iPhones in the United States. There are many issues, cost being a minor issue. The bigger issues are engineering education in this country, the ability to get the right number of skilled people to do the production, the way that Apple has to fill up city blocks worth of facilities in order to produce these iPhones. It's just too complex and it's not going to happen. This is not something that is certainly going to happen over the next 3.5 years while Trump continues to be in office. So this is nothing more than a pipe dream. Of course, Donald Trump, he's enacting his tariffs because he wants things to be made in the U.S. Of course, there are many things that Tim Cook wants. He doesn't want Donald Trump to put new policies in place that is going to hurt Apple. He wants the DOJ lawsuit against Apple to be dropped. He wants all sorts of stuff from Donald Trump, so he's going to play nice too. Is there a scenario where Apple ups investments in the U.S.? Is there a scenario where Apple does more manufacturing of components and partnerships in the U.S.? Sure. But I think what we're all talking about here is a process called FATP. That stands for Final Assembly, Testing, and Packaging. Putting the iPhones together, taking them off the assembly line, put them in the boxes, and shipping them out to customers around the world. It's not going to happen in the U.S. anytime soon.
What would an iPhone cost built here in the U.S.?
So I wouldn't even want to speculate because
let's get this straight. Let's get this straight. You got these individuals. I don't know what their educational background is, all right, but they love to pontificate about how bad manufacturing is in the United States, or we don't have enough skilled workers, or yada yada yada. All right, but I'm willing to bet that they have never designed or worked in manufacturing or in engineering. I'm willing to bet on it. All right. But they'll have this liberal arts education and have an answer for everything, but not actually interview someone that's actually a manufacturing engineer or a design engineer or a testing engineer. Why don't they, you're telling me they can't find anybody on Bloomberg to actually do that with their huge network of individuals? You can't find anyone to interview to talk about the true manufacturing capability of the United States. Now, could we have more people working in design and manufacturing in the United States and train them up? Yeah, of course. But the answer isn't interviewing liberal arts majors.
Bloomberg News managing editor, Global Consumer Tech, watching Apple for us.
See, this is the reason why I don't like Joe, because he's one of these perma-bear I hate Trumpers. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take my advice because it works. The protocol that I do slows down the aging process and improves your health and your wellness. Get the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. It will target multiple systems. It'll target your heart, target your vascular system, target your brain function, boost up your energy levels, improve your metabolism, and help with your strength. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost. You get a big scooper. Take a scooper every day for breakfast or for lunch. Mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, a smoothie. But that is your breakfast or your lunch. You take it once a day. You'll lose weight, you will get healthy, and you will get healthy fast. All right? You're going to start feeling the effects of this within 72 hours. Now, this is a great way to lose weight safely and consistently, and to have a steady level of energy, no spiking of energy.
It'll be a steady burn throughout the whole day, and you're going to get healthy. All right. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And it's really important. Improve your cardiovascular health and reduce your chances of diabetes. Another great supplement that I have is the heirloom barley. It's a high density protein. You get a big scooper, take a scooper a day, take it for breakfast or for lunch. You can mix it with your Boomer Boost for max benefit. It'll help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. Bringing down inflammation is going to allow you to recover after a workout. It's going to reduce that pain that you may be feeling from arthritis. Reducing inflammation also helps your immune system and your cardiovascular system, because by bringing down inflammation, you're bringing down those pro-inflammatory cytokines, and therefore your immune system is going to be revved up. All right, you're going to improve your immune system. Bringing down inflammation at the vascular level reduces plaque formation. Now, Gladiator barley, you get all the benefits in Gladiator barley as you do with the heirloom barley, but you get one additional benefit, and it helps to build muscle. You'll gain extra strength. Stacks really well with Myotrol, and stacks really, really well with Boomer Boost. If you really want to maximize controlling your A1C levels, your blood glucose levels, take the Gladiator barley and the Boomer Boost and do resistance training. Again, it's a powder. You take a scooper or half a scooper a day. Follow my advice and you're going to get healthy. Trust me. I'm in my 50s, all right? I don't look like I'm in my 50s. Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? Because my protocol works. So follow my advice and you're going to get healthy. Now, let's talk about another stack here. Vitamin B complex. The first 4 vitamin Bs will help with your mitochondrial health and boost up your energy levels. Vitamin B is really important for cellular metabolism, and vitamin B12 is a neuroprotector, to protect your neurons. It's really important once you turn age 40. Take vitamin B complex. If you're 40 years of age, you better start taking vitamin B every day. Drink it with filtered water. Resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades, and guess what? It works. It stacks really well with C60, ubiquinol, NAD+, clarity factor. All right, resveratrol is going to soak up free radicals, so that's going to reduce stress on your cells. It's going to help to improve your mitochondrial health. That way, you're going to have more energy. And resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression. Do you want to look like Alex Jones, or do you want to look like DrPaulCottrell? Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the resveratrol. And a great foundation to build off of for a health protocol is taking a high-quality multivitamin. This is an easy-to-digest multivitamin. This stacks great with the probiotic I have, and you just build off of that as a foundation. Now, multivitamins are really important for enzymatic activity, all right? Because multivitamins are cofactors for the enzyme to change the shape of the enzyme so it performs better. So that means that you'll have better cellular processing. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get this multivitamin. It is an easy-to-digest multivitamin, and you stack it. Stack it with the probiotics or the resveratrol or the B complex. It's a good foundational supplement. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, slow down the aging process and boost up that immune system, and you are going to have more vitality. Trust me on this. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg.
3.97%. Spot gold up $44 the ounce, up 1.4% now, while West Texas Intermediate crude is lower by 2.1%, $61.79 a barrel. The Producer Price Index, a gauge of wholesale costs, posted the largest drop in almost 5 years, a surprise 0.5% decline. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Benny Judice.
Why now? Tame inflation data with the tariffs pending? Here's why. Slumping margins. Sign businesses are absorbing some of the cost of higher tariffs, not passing them along to consumers for now. Even so, consumer confidence in the U.S. economy is way down. There are also signs consumer spending is moderating. A tepid increase in April retail sales. Any doubt, G-Nice Bloomberg Radio.
Vinny, guess what? If consumer confidence was so way down, why is the S&P 500 trading at 5,910? We're above the 5,900 level right now, intraday. Now, will it stay up there? Who knows? But the thing is that the all-time high was like 6,130. We're not that far away from an all-time high on the S&P 500. And if you paid attention to me, back 4 weeks ago, I said buy into the market. Don't be afraid. And if you listen to me, depending on where your entry points were, you could have earned 22%, 18%, 10% return in 4 weeks. So it behooves you to actually listen when I tell you to get in the market. Just like I told you when to get out of the market during the crash of 2020. And it behooves you to actually listen to me when I tell you what you need to do to boost up your immune system. I helped you navigate you through the 2020 crisis. Guess what? If you pay attention to me, you're not going to have the problems that most Americans have in their geriatric years. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and don't listen to Vinny, because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
So far, birthright citizenship with a constitutional question that's being asked here by way of a procedural question. This is a little bit complicated, but that's why we have Greg Story and his great reporting on the terminal and online. Should lower court judges have the authority, and you've heard the White House push back hard on this, have the authority to block federal policies with nationwide injunctions? That's what the justices are seeking to answer. And based on their answer, we could have a way forward here when it comes to birthright citizenship. Latest from Eric Larson on the terminal, the Supreme Court's liberal justices, not a big surprise, indicating that the president's executive order restricting birthright citizenship is probably illegal. That's based on oral arguments a short time ago as we assemble our panel. Rick Davis is with us in studio today, Bloomberg Politics contributor, a Republican strategist and partner at Stone Court Capital. Jeannie Shenzena with us from New York, senior democracy fellow with the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress, our Democratic analyst. Great to see you both here. Rick, when you're reading the tea leaves, I guess it really shouldn't be a big surprise that the liberal justices feel this way. How does the rest of the court feel about the procedural question?
It's interesting because some of the questions, and I'm certainly not a really great court watcher, but some of the questions by Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh indicate a concern for the same thing. In other words, if a lower court district judge can't make a nationwide ban, doesn't that result in thousands of cases being taken up by other courts all over the country to have the same effect? And are we really walking into a trap by saying, sure, notionally, a federal district court judge shouldn't be able to do that, except look at what the reaction will be if they can't? And so in this case in particular, there would be thousands, tens of thousands of cases challenging the ban on birthright citizenship. And yet, right now, it's only the liberal judges who are saying, and by the way, let's talk about birthright citizenship. Right? Yes. It is the law of the land. And so a lot of people are misreading this court case. It's not a ruling on the legality of birthright citizenship right now. It's really on the court's power to make these nationwide injunctions, many of which have been used to stop these executive orders that Donald Trump has been issuing. So this is a really new thing that the courts are having to grapple with.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Looks
for this
like
administration.
they may be talking right now.
Have their names etched in the collective memory of the UAE. They are Pat and Marianne Kennedy. They arrived in LA in late 50s, working under challenging conditions. at a time when up to 1 in 2 infants and 1 in 4 mothers died during childbirth. They founded Oasis Hospital, which played a pivotal role in the development of healthcare in the UAE. A few months after their arrival, Mr. President, I was born in the same hospital that these 2 American doctors founded. In recognition of their contributions, they were awarded the Abu Dhabi Award in its first edition in 2005. And in 2019, the hospital was renamed Kenneth Hospital in their honor. And their family was hosted in Abu Dhabi in gratitude for their service to the people of the UAE. Mr. President, the UAE and the United States share a strong development-focused partnership. This partnership has taken a significant leap forward since he assumed office, particularly in the areas of the new economy, energy, advanced technology, artificial intelligence, and industry. A testament to this is the UAE's plan to invest in the US in these sectors through the UAE's investment bodies at a total value of $1.4 trillion over the next 10 years. Additionally, major partnerships and projects are underway between private sector entities in both nations. Beyond these areas, our countries maintain a strategic partnership in the field of space exploration. And the astronaut program and the asteroid belt mission. In this context, I would like to share something that may not be widely known. The American spacecraft Apollo 17 that flew in 1973 has carried the UAE flag on its journey to the moon. That same flag was later sent by NASA to our nation's founding father, the late Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, in 1973, along with a fragment of lunar rock. Sheikh Zayed met with Apollo astronauts on several occasions, and he had a deep and enduring mission for the UAE to reach space. Mr. President, in March of this year, you stated that the UAE and the United States have long been partners in efforts to bring peace and security to the Middle East and the world. Today, I reaffirm to you that the UAE remains committed to working with the United States to advance peace and stability in our region and globally. Once again, Mr. President, I warmly welcome you, and I'm confident that this visit will have a profound and positive impact on the future of our bilateral relations. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Your Highness. What a lot of people don't know, I think my staff is very surprised by it. You and I have been friends for a long time. We've been good friends. And what they don't know about you is that you are considered a truly great warrior. And you've been through the wars. You're a great warrior, a very strong man, a brilliant man, a man of vision like few others, and highly respected. When they know you, there's tremendous respect, and you're so respected in the Middle East that it's really amazing. You know, we've done the tour with two of your very good friends, you know that, and we were talking about you, and I won't tell you everything they said, but I can say it was all good. It was all good. Total admiration and respect for what you've done and who you are. And they said, when he gives you a handshake, when he makes a deal, that's the deal. And your wonderful brother came to Washington a few weeks ago, and he told us about your generous statement as to the 1.4 trillion. And all I can say is thank you very much. We will work very hard to deserve it. I have absolutely no doubt that the relationship will only get bigger and better. Your relationship and mine can't get better, so I can't say it's going to get better because it's at the highest level it can be. But our countries will work together. We've become a very hot country. We were not such a hot country 6 months ago. And now I think we're the hottest country, if you want to know the truth. We had one little indication a year ago. We were having a hard time getting people to join the military, enlistment, they call it in our country. Getting very bad vibes, very unhappy. It was an unhappy country. A lot of foolish things were happening, stupid things were happening. And we just got the numbers. We had the highest enlistment numbers just about that we've ever had. We think it's probably the highest, but they say have to be extremely accurate when it comes to the news because they check every word I say. There's a little bit of an inaccuracy, but I will tell you we had just about the best numbers for enlistment we've ever had. Every one of our services, I'm very proud of Space Force because I created Space Force. That was my baby. Hadn't been done in 78 years of force, the new force. And it's doing phenomenally well. We were not winning the space war, and now we're leading it by tremendous margins over Russia and China primarily. And so we're very proud of it, but I'm very proud of maybe even more so the enlistment numbers. So we went from having a hard time getting people to join our armed forces and our police, by the way, to having the best numbers that we've ever had, wanting to join. They're proud of our country again. That's a big thing, and to happen so fast, over about a 6 or 7 month period, that's a big honor. And likewise, the police, very hard to get police, and now the ranks are bursting and with pride. So that's something that we're very happy about. We've had investments in our country over the last 3 months, but really 2 months because it took me a couple of weeks to get started. I get a little acclimated again. Because we had a very successful first term, as you know. We had one of the most successful economies in the history of our country. Our first term was amazing. We did a lot of things. We rebuilt our military. We did a lot of great things. And I think this is even going to be better. But we have now, I think, substantially over $10 trillion of investment. And now when they add the 1.4 trillion, we easily break that number. So that's investment or investment that we think will soon happen. And it doesn't include people that are building because not everybody comes and tells us that they're building it. That's a big country, but we're having numbers that we've never done before. And that means AI plants. That means, as an example, a really good example is Apple. Apple's now spending much more than $500 billion on plants. They didn't do that before. As you know, they built their plants in another location. We have the biggest computer company, $500 billion. We have Mr. Wei of Taiwan is spending $200 billion. And Jensen is great. Jensen Wang is spending $500 billion. We have numbers that nobody's ever seen before. That all means jobs, because to me the most important jobs, I want jobs. And we have costs are way down. Groceries, and we have a term, grocery. It's an old term, but it means basically what you're buying, food. It's a pretty accurate term, but it's an old-fashioned sound. But groceries are down, costs are down, eggs are down. And first week they were hitting me with eggs were up 200%, and now they're down to a number that is amazing. We're down 97, 98% from where they were. And everybody, they said, you won't have eggs for Easter. Well, we had everybody had eggs for Easter at a very reasonable price. At the White House, we had a Easter egg roll, and we had hundreds of thousands of eggs purchased. We said, you have to go out and buy plastic eggs. That didn't work out. So we've done a real job, and our energy costs are way down. The energy is way down, gasoline is down, and we have almost no inflation. So we've got the economy back. We've got a border now that's very powerful, 99.9%, and nobody would have believed that was possible. It was a real mess. We had, frankly, an incompetent previous administration. I know you weren't thrilled with them. They abandoned people, and it wasn't that they abandoned, they didn't bother to call people back. They treated people with great disrespect, but part of it was a level of stupidity that we've never seen before. And I'm glad we arrived, and I know you people also woo you. You're an amazing country, you're a rich country, you can have your choice, but I know you'll never leave my side. I really sure I know that. And you know the special relationship that we have and our country has. So our country's back with you, and our country's back in a lot of ways. We have a country with tremendous spirit right now. Tremendous. I haven't seen anything like it. I would say this, we're far ahead of schedule. If you would have told me these numbers in a year and a half from now, I would have been very happy with them. But think that substantially more than $10 trillion, you'll have numbers of other presidents where they won't do $1 trillion in a long time. $1 trillion. We did it in 2 months because, again, you figure 3, but let me have 1 month of fixing up the Oval Office. In other words, getting things ready. And I look forward to having you in the White House. We'll celebrate together. But we are going to be your friend, and we're going to be your partner, and we really appreciate your confidence and investment. That's your biggest investment that you've ever made, and we really appreciate it, and we're going to treat you very, as you should be, magnificently. And you're a magnificent man, and it's an honor to be with you. My honor, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Thank you. Shabbat Shabbat.
نستدعي سموكم بالبدء. Your Highness, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, in recognition of President Donald Trump's exceptional efforts to strengthen the long-standing ties of friendship and strategic partnership between the United Arab Emirates and United States of America, I am honored to announce that His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan bestows the Order of Zayed upon President Trump.
Well, that's true. And of course, the UAE, not the only Gulf state who has been wanting to have further penetration into this kind of technology as they look to diversify their economies, has asked this of the US, Saudi Arabia, getting some commitments in regard to chips as well. But Bloomberg is reporting today that there are some even close to President Trump within the administration who are more hawkish on national security issues, who do have concerns about access being granted to these countries. And specifically, if some of these could actually end up in China as an end market, knowing there needs to be perhaps greater guardrails on this kind of commitment to make everybody comfortable. But obviously, that is what President Trump is in the region for, is to...
You're going to hear individuals in the mainstream media saying that Trump's negotiations with these three Arab nations, sending high-end technology for artificial intelligence development, is going to be a national security issue because the Chinese may infiltrate, all right? But you have to keep in mind, you have the Israeli lobbying group that doesn't like what Trump's doing. And you also have a deep state that wants never-ending war in the Middle East. Trump is actually diffusing that explosive attitude from the national security state, this deep state. All right, we are literally seeing an inflection point of history here, where there is going to be peace and prosperity in that region. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen overnight. It's not. But can you imagine in 10 years from now, where technology and where those benefits will take place? Let me give you an example. I remember starting my career, in automotive. There wasn't such a thing as internet, not like we have today. I mean, the internet back then was for the military and for, research centers, universities. But, and that there wasn't email for, in corporate email. We had fax machines. So fast forward, all right, and then AOL comes out. And even before AOL, there was Genie and CompuServe, and BBS, bulletin board systems, with modems and stuff. So it wasn't like today, all right? Now, right at that moment in time, I would say about 97, 98 would seem to be an inflection point. And the internet started to take off, all right? And it started to be implemented more at the corporate level with emails and stuff. Email even came even before that, probably around 94. Some places probably you started seeing emails, at least intra email system within corporate, not over the internet, but through the network. But either way, the internet kind of takes off at around the late 90s. And you have huge development that takes place, huge productivity gains. That's not that long ago, all right? For ease of calculating, you're talking about just a little over 25, 26, 27 years ago, where it really takes off. So where was the internet, let's just say, at the 10-year mark? So if we use the delineation point for the zeitgeist of the internet at around 98, all right? So around 2008, okay, where was the economy, and a lot was available, a lot could be done on the with computers at the home level and at the corporate level in 2008 or 2010. Just extrapolate in 10 years what artificial intelligence is going to do. That's something that was like AOL all right, AOL internet, dial-up, 97, all right? And fast forward to 2008 and the difference. You had high-speed internet and you had gigabytes of data flowing between corporations easily. Something similar is going to happen. Not exactly, but something similar. There's going to be huge development. There's going to be huge discoveries. It's going to be huge advances in productivity in the next 10 years. So all this money that's being spent in the Middle East, all of this build out in the world is going to allow us to get to another level of productivity. Now the question is, you know, how does it, will there be job dislocations? You know, one side of the coin says that it'll be creative destruction and there'll be more jobs. There's another side of it that says that artificial intelligence may actually lead to labor decoupling with capital, and there would be mass layoffs. We don't know for sure, but there's, in the next 10 years, there's going to be huge developments to take place. And so when we hear, like, you know, $10 trillion of investment over 10 years or whatever, right, in an industry, you're going to feel that pace it's going to be pretty profound. Just like how profound it was between, let's say, 1997 and 2008. That was a profound difference in technology and what was available. And take it even further to where we're at right now in 2025 and compare it to 1997. So we are seeing a tipping point. We are seeing a change. There's an inflection point that's going on with technology, with peace, potential peace in the Middle East, and this reconfiguring. But you're going to have people trying to demonize what Trump just did because of lobbying groups. Some of them are even from Israel, the Israeli lobbying group, or, you know, lobbying groups that are really heavily involved in never-ending wars in certain regions. They're always looking for a Vietnam somewhere in the world. They don't want to solve the problem. They don't want to win the war. They just want it to last long enough to just keep the military-industrial complex cranking out munitions. Something different is taking place. So I haven't heard Bloomberg say much positive about Trump, but Trump literally brought trillions of dollars to the United States in 3 days. Over $1 trillion. It's not $2 trillion, but it's over $1 trillion in 3 days. That's pretty amazing.
So again, he's got to go home to New York to sell this. And Congressman Lilota was not having too much of this idea of a cap at $30,000 for individuals, never mind the 40-80 that Kaylee threw out there. That's where we start our conversation with Congressman Marlin Stutzman, the Republican representing Indiana's 3rd District, is with us live from Capitol Hill. Congressman, it's great to have you back on Bloomberg TV and radio. A lot of things need to happen pretty quickly here. We put the pieces together. If we follow
it'll pass. There'll be a negotiation. There's going to be markups from the Senate. It's going to be a new bill. It'll get passed probably in July. And guess what? That's going to be an accelerant, and you're going to see an all-time high on the S&P 500. And if you paid attention to me, you would have made a lot of money. And if you paid attention to other people like Alex Jones or other people that were saying the sky was falling, you would have lost money. Now, who do you want to really listen to? Do you want to listen to someone that actually is telling you how to make money in the market in real time and telling you how to improve your health? I'm older than Alex Jones. older. Do you want to listen to what I do to improve my health and follow? Or do you want to listen to Alex Jones that looks like he's like 70 years old? Maybe 60, all right? And he thinks that the safe haven is buying gold. Really? Really? Guess what? Guess what? Never bet against the United States. Say it, write it down on a piece of paper, say it in the mirror. Never bet against the United States. She will always surprise you in the positive. Thank you for listening and have a nice day. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take the supplements, stack them the way I tell you to. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. The link is in the description of this video and all my videos. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Stack these supplements the way I tell you to. Improve your immune system, boost up your energy levels, slow down the aging process, and have more vitality. Don't fall into the trap of pharmacopoeia. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.